Good evening. We'll call to order the meeting of the City Council of the City of Gahanna for Monday, November 18th, 2024. If you would please join me to stand for the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance led by Vice President Trenton Weaver.
Thank you. As we gather, we are grateful for, appreciate, and use each day that comes before us. For each day's duties and in each day's difficulties, we are challenged to give our best always in service to one another and to our community. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Mr. Van Meter, would you please call the roll?
Bowers.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
McGregor.
Here.
Padova.
Here.
Renner. Here. Schnetzer. Here. Weaver.
Here.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Van Meter. Are there any additions or corrections to tonight's agenda? All right. Hearing none, we'll move on to Section C of the agenda, presentations. This evening, we have one item, a joint resolution proclamation to recognize Small Business Saturday. Should I turn this over to Mayor Jadwin?
Okay. Looking at Ms. Padova, not sure. So yes, this is a joint resolution and proclamation to officially recognize Small Business Saturday, which will be Saturday, November 30th here in the city. I think the last council meeting, I talked a little bit about the history of the founding of Small Business Saturday recognition, which was really created to showcase and promote local businesses and the importance of spending your dollars locally. I think 68 cents of every dollar spent locally stays within the community. It also helps to support jobs, helps to incur related indirect spending, and as we all know in Gahanna, we have a thriving small business community, and they rely heavily upon our support to help keep them going and strong and vibrant. So with us tonight, I actually have a small business owner, Mr. Michael Jones, who is the owner of Jonesware Screen Printing. If you've driven up East Johnstown Road, past Pam's Popcorn, where she used to be located, he's in that mall right there. Truly an inspirational story. Mr. Jones began his business 20 years ago in his basement up in New Albany, and really turned his passion for bettering his community into a full-fledged business. In his early days, he really wanted to help his community and started by donating starter jackets and Nike tennis shoes to at-risk inner-city youth as a deterrence for them, deterrence from stealing and committing violent acts. But that passion for helping others really led him to then open his first brick and mortar business, which was in New Albany, but for the last 8 years, he's been here in Gahanna, and we are just thrilled to have really somebody who is a leader in his industry. He offers a one-stop shop with everything from screen printing to embroidery, promotional items, signage, you name it, he can do it. But he, again, has truly been heads and tails in the community with his passion and his dedication for serving others and for just investing those dollars back into others to help make their lives better. So he is with us this evening to help to receive this proclamation, as we like to call it. And I don't know if Councilwoman Padova, if you have any words as well, because you're kind of co-sponsoring this with me as well.
Yes, I just wanted to also acknowledge the impact of small businesses on our community. And I know in May we recognized Tracy Gerard of Collective Home Supply, and I just wanted to kind of the worlds are merging a little bit with holiday lights this weekend. I will also be mentioning that in my CVB report, but they will be doing a collective supply market during holiday lights celebration. So I believe they have around 30 different vendors that will be there, all small businesses that are pouring their heart and soul doing these markets and such. So highly encourage people to come and do some of your small business Saturday shopping on the Sunday before and help contribute to these small businesses. Thank you.
So
Thank you, Ms.
Madam President, I don't know if you want to follow kind of our typical protocol, if you if you want to take a photo, how would you like to do
Yes, let's
this?
go ahead
Okay.
and do that next. And then if there are any other remarks, we can take remarks, okay?
Excellent, thank you.
you.
Mr. Jones, would you like to come forward?
I did, because I knew that we were busy this week, so. That's right, it's a weekend, birthday weekend. Mr. Jones, here you go. You guys are like 10, right? Or on your husband's side. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Of course, absolutely, yeah. If you want to come over to the podium here, and that way that Mike will pick you up, and we're happy to thank you. Yeah, if you would, yep, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. It's really comfortable.
Okay, I just want to make this very brief. I don't have that much to say. I just want to say I'm truly honored to be here and accept this award. And I want to here in the city of Gahanna for this recognition.
Do any of my colleagues have any further comment on this item tonight?
I do, just
Yes,
really
Ms.
quickly.
Jones,
So
yes.
first of all, thank you for being here, and thank you. I did not know that your business existed until last year, and so Mr. Jones did my campaign shirt, so thank you. And I just value the conversations that we had on my multiple trips in to see you, and so just really, really appreciate you and what you contribute to the community. So thank you.
Excellent. Yes, Mr. Weaver.
Thank you, Madam President. Very briefly, just want to thank you, Mr. Jones, for being here and congratulate you, not only for receiving the joint resolution and proclamation, but for all of your success. And just generally, a broad comment that, you know, our small businesses really are the backbone of our community, of any community, and would just encourage our residents, especially as the holidays are just around the corner, get out and support our local small businesses. So thank you for being a representative of our small business community and for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. All right. Thank you. Moving on to section D of tonight's agenda, we have one speaker slip, and then I believe the rest are for the public hearing this evening. Our first speaker slip is also on a resolution that is on, joint resolution proclamation that is on our consent agenda. We don't have a formal presentation this evening, but we will be mailing the resolution for the World Day of Remembrance for Road Traffic Victims to Ginger Tornes at their event this coming weekend. So with that, Ms. Montgomery, if you would join us at the podium, and you know the drill.
Sharon Montgomery, 572 Bonington Way here in Gahanna. There will be no long rants about distracted driving tonight. I just want to thank you for your joint resolution proclamation to designate November 17th, 2024 as World Day of Remembrance for Road Traffic Victims in Gahanna. For personal reasons, I was tardy in getting my request to you soon enough for you to do this before November 17th, so I especially appreciate your doing it anyway. I wish Ginger Tornes could be here with me tonight, but she had to be out of town. She's the founder of the Columbus Observation of this important day. At our event yesterday, we had speakers on the trauma of being a victim, the trauma of treating victims, the short and long-term ways that roads can be designed and built to reduce the possibility of crashes, or at least reduce the severity of crashes, the way fatality reviews are looking at more factors to learn more ways to prevent crashes, and the gaps casualties of sober drivers fall through in the victim support system. We were also able to thank first responders for their role in providing the almost immediate care so crucial to recovery or even survival. And we honored Dr. Jack Marchbanks for his many years of dedication to safe transportation as he retired from his position as Director of Ohio Department of Transportation. Our own state representative, Beryl Brown Picklantonio, was busy at a constituent meeting yesterday, but her joint sponsor, Representative Mike Skindle, came down from Lakewood to tell us his victim story and about their joint House Bill 490 to make the third Sunday of every November Road Traffic Victims Day of Remembrance in Ohio. I'm so proud of my city for passing, and I assume you will, this joint resolution proclamation, and for all the other actions you've taken to make residents and visitors in Gahanna safe on our roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Montgomery. All right. Thank you. All right. If there are no other speaker slips except for the public hearing, we'll move on to Section E of tonight's agenda, the public hearing. The rule is stated on the agenda. This evening, we have the first public hearing on Ordinance 65-2024, an ordinance adopting appropriations for city expenses and other expenditures of the city of Gahanna during the fiscal year 2025. I do not anticipate there to be any presentation by the administration this evening because we've been doing presentations at Finance Committee meetings since October. Speakers who wish to speak at public hearing must complete a speaker slip, and each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. When your name is called, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Additional time, if needed, may be requested, and permission is at the discretion of Council President pursuant to these council rules. So our first public hearing speaker slip received in order is from Mr. Tim McClurg.
Hi, my name is Tim McClurg. I live at 935 Leaf Law Court in Gahanna. I've been here 30 years. I want to thank you for the opportunity to address the 2025 budget. I understand the budget is supposed to be supporting the CIP plan, so sometimes it's hard for me to see the relationship between the two, the CIP and the 2025 budget, but maybe I need to go to the Finance Committee meetings. I was lucky to be able to attend the Walkable Gahanna event and provided some input there, which I think was very important and was well attended. Some items I'd like to be considered is a suspension bridge for wheelchairs, golf carts, walkers, bicycles, scooters, anything but a motorized vehicle like a car or a truck or something, to go across Big Walnut from Friendship Park confluence to the Big Walnut Trail. This would be a very low-cost option and open Friendship Park up to more access from the Big Walnut Trail. I also think the trail from the playground to the back of the park along the river and out to the shelter house should be blacktop to allow for bikes, wheelchairs, strollers, and also walkers. I love concerts there in that park because the children can play on the playground while the parents watch a concert or hang out in the park. Obviously, more parking will be needed once the facilities are able to move. I also think Creekside Park is meant to be walked at night, and the Millstream waterfalls should be lit with color-changing spotlights from a pole. We've had lights there before when the falls were first put in, but they were in the ground, and the first flood that came in washed them all away. So it makes sense to put them up on a pole. I think there would also be a good investment to place GPS mapping software on the city plows so citizens can track when and where a street was done and when it may be scheduled to be done. So you could eliminate a lot of the calls to the city about my street not being plowed. It's not so that people can call and bug to get their street done. It's just awareness that they would have and show how many times the arteries need to be done and the effort involved there. I'd also like to weigh in on the extension of the Big Walnut Trail over by Rocky Ford South to Prosciutto Park. I think first there needs to be parking lot there so that we don't have to park on the street or at the church, because there's no parking anywhere else to get onto the beginning part of that trail. I'm also concerned about the path crossing over 270, 2 entrances and 1 large exit ramp. We just heard about concern about traffic accidents, and I think crossing over, can I have another minute?
Yeah, if you would go ahead and,
Yeah, thanks. So I think it's a short-term solution to have crosswalks with lights, but I think it'll cause huge backups when the crosswalk is on and people aren't able to get onto the ramp onto 270. The last thing I wanted to talk about was I was one of the lucky few that attended the 6-week class for Citizens Academy. I'm wearing my proud sweatshirt right now. This was well put together course that took you through the operations, IT, police and fire, engineering, planning, water snow removal, parks and rec, and all the employees that were there supported this. I can tell you that your city workers love Gahanna and that they work very hard for the citizens to keep the city looking good. A lot of times they would say when they're in the parks, walking around with their own kids, they're picking up stuff because they want their parks to look good for the city. I sat behind one of those huge snow plows, and I would not enjoy driving one of those on the street. The plow seemed like it was out there forever in the distance of the truck, and it's a huge responsibility. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. McClurg. If you have written comments, you're welcome to submit them by email or to Mr. Van Meter for the record.
Okay. Yeah, I pulled the clerk out.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next speaker slip this evening is Bob Weishar.
Good evening, Bob Weissar, 530 Woodmark Run in Gahanna. I am one of the co-founders of 254 Teen Center. I also serve as the president of the board and currently the acting executive director. Contrary to what the students might believe and say, I neither live nor work at 254. I actually have a home in Gahanna, and my day job is in the insurance industry, but I am there quite a bit. First, I want to express my gratitude for the support the city has provided through the community grant program. From an operating standpoint, we are not fully, financially sustainable. So any donations, regular donations we receive, they're vital to cover our mortgage, utility supplies, just normal operating expenses. We do stretch those dollars as far as we can, but they don't leave room for significant improvements. For example, the students have been asking for a basketball hoop for quite a while. We did buy a residential quality hoop and set up by the patio, and while that was a hit, it quickly became clear that it wasn't suitable for the long term. We had to replace the hoop multiple times. The siding and screens were damaged, congestion around the back door caused regular friction. But this year, thanks to a grant, we installed a concrete slab and a commercial quality hoop. And the transformation has been remarkable. More students enjoying more activities with less friction. But beyond those tangible improvements, I can't overestimate the morale boost our staff and volunteers experience knowing that the city values and invests in us. Before starting 254, I was a youth leader at a church for 20 years, and I was used to having parents and a church body kind of see us, be around us, and support us. But since the Teen Center has opened, our relationships are primarily with the students, and sometimes we feel invisible more broadly. So being recognized by the community through that support was definitely a tremendous encouragement. But second, as a Gahanna resident, I want to voice my support for continued city investment in local nonprofits. Like many others, I'm happy to support these organizations, knowing that my contribution is combined with significant investment of time and money from the organization's leaders to magnify the impact. For example, the funds for the grant, by having volunteers engaged, we could stretch those funds further. In many areas, a for-profit business or city department would need to spend much more to achieve the same outcome. But identifying which nonprofits are most aligned with the community needs can be difficult. That's why I value the city's role in partnering with nonprofits. When taxpayer dollars are allocated to an organization, it's a sign that our trusted civic leaders have vetted these programs and found them impactful. It gives residents like me confidence that our money is being used wisely to serve the community. In closing, thank you for your past support of 254, recognizing the value that nonprofits bring to Gahanna in general, and your continued investment makes a meaningful difference in the lives of our youth and strengthens our community. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker slip is from Karen Wester.
Hi, I'm Karen Wester. I live at 1132 River Ridge Boulevard. Thanks for the opportunity to take a few moments to speak on the 2025 proposed budget. I want to address the community grant program for nonprofits, which was discussed during the Finance Committee meeting held on October 28, 2024. I am opposed to funding this program with tax dollars from the general fund for several reasons, but the most important of which is this. This is not what we told voters revenue would be used for in 2019. In 2019, the city was in a dire financial position, and increasing our tax revenue was crucial to ensuring that our city remained the desirable, welcome community that we proudly call home. At that time, we had 20 years of backlog maintenance that we could not address at the time. This included everything from paving crumbling streets to replacing unsafe, outdated playgrounds and upkeep of Creekside District. Crucial services like public safety were underfunded. There was really only one option at that point, and that was raising the city income tax rate, which hadn't changed since 1976. I had the honor of chairing the 2019 Issue 12 campaign to get voters to agree to just that. Collectively, we knocked thousands of doors to deliver one message. We needed to bolster our revenue to keep our community thriving. We told voters that this new funding would last 20 years. The time needed to catch up, keep up, and move forward on crucial community projects and initiatives. Thankfully, Issue 12 passed, and as a result, our city has made significant progress on backlog projects and maintenance. It's allowed us to add other programs critical to our community's health, vitality, and even walkability, such as the citywide sidewalk program. I believe that's exactly what we need more of, but we still have a ways to go. I believe you'd be hard-pressed to find a peer community that had and still has the quantity of deferred maintenance and projects that we currently do. The $100,000 allocated to fund the community grant program, not including administrative and audit costs, proposes using money from the general fund, and I believe this deviates from the city's stated goal in 2019 of using funds for public services and brick and mortar needs. I believe this is a dangerous precedent to set. Let me be clear though. I believe that our nonprofits are worthy of support and funding. I'm personally committed to several nonprofits, including the Gahanna Chamber of Commerce, the John E. Bickley Gahanna YMCA, of which both I sit on the boards of, Make Gahanna Yours, and the Gahanna Jefferson Education Foundation, to name a few. I believe in nonprofit work wholeheartedly and will continue to work to further their missions. I do believe that your desire to put this funding in place is well-intentioned. I believe it is the wrong mechanism for funding. There are other ways our community can fund the missions of local nonprofits, such as the Give to Gahanna campaign, which kicks off in just 2 weeks. Because other peer communities have a similar program in place, it may be tempting, or we should assume that we should do the same. But I do believe we need to maintain our integrity with Issue 12 voters and the community at large. I have 10 seconds. Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead. Thank
We
you.
need to keep our word. And let's get caught up on the backlog before we begin donating taxpayer funds to nonprofit initiatives, although they may be worthy. Thank you for your time this evening, and I appreciate everything you do for our city.
Thank you, Ms. Wester. Next speaker slip I had this evening is from Sylvia Cremarius.
Hello, sorry. My name is Sylvia Cremarius. You were fine saying Cremarius, by
Apologies.
the way. I live at 332 Jenny Drive, and I've been a resident for nearly 10 years. So I'm here to talk about the budget. I'm advocating to balance fiscal responsibility with providing the employees with well-deserved salary increase. I want to say that I am looking at expenditures outpacing revenue, and it really makes me frustrated, so you might see a little tension. The expenditures outpace revenue by 2020, looking at the budget forecast. So I thought, I just got this on Sunday, really, and I thought we all owe a debt to everybody up here to roll up our sleeves, to look at the budget, and to participate with whatever gifts and talents that we have. And so I took some time, as you can see, I have kids, to look at the budget. So to bridge the gap, I wanted to offer that there are some things that the city can do. One thing is to use the employee share premium holiday to defer part of the full 7% salary increase to 2026. The 7% salary increase in 2025 totals $2.576 million. That's the total salary and benefits in 2024, which is $36.8 million. And this can be reduced by $184,000. That's the total health insurance cost if you use like a 20% benchmark for the employee contribution. So that's the value, $184,000, the value of the employee's premium holiday. So you could reduce the salary increase to 2.392 million rather than 2.576 million, or move from a 7% increase to a 6.5 increase. And why are you doing that? You're just trying to find buckets of money so that you can forestall the budget cliff that you're going to experience in 2029. And some of the forecasts is built on assumptions, but if the city anticipates that its employees will do well with their health and wellness benchmarks, this cost saving over 4 years could potentially give us $376,000 in expenditure savings. So, but I actually wouldn't add that into the budget forecast because we don't know if they're continuing to do well. Now, this is significantly less than the $2.1 million shortfall that we're anticipating, but it helps give us the budget relief that we need, and if taken with other fiscal maneuverings, then we can work ourselves out of the fiscal crisis that we're anticipating. And I do acknowledge that there are issues with this proposal. It does not tease out the union contract agreements and could potentially disincentivize the employees because they are doing a really good job. Madam President. However, I just picked this up on Sunday and I could see some opportunities. This was the first opportunity to talk about it with you all. And I wanted to at least pitch or give you guys the idea that there are some things that we can do. We all have a responsibility to chip away at what we're looking at in the future. The other thing is, I have my girls here, and I wanted to tell their names so they can say hello. But it's bedtime, and thankfully my son, who came in, he came to pick them up for me, and I'm just making it work like every other parent. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Ms. Cremarius. The last speaker slip that I have this evening is from Chris Wagner.
Good evening, Council. My name is Chris Wagner, 4550 East Johnstown Road. I come to you tonight in a couple hats. First, as the board chair for Gahanna Residents in Need, also as an educator in the district for 18 years, and a resident of Gahanna for 35. I just wanted to come in support of continuing the community grant funding that's on your line items for this year, and talk about how previous grant funding has helped us with GRIN specifically. So we've been the recipient twice. The first was for a large freezer that we needed in order to help us be able to support the great need that we have here in the city. When we talk about investing back into the community, to tell you what that freezer has done for us and for those that are our constituents, has been game changer. We used to have to turn away food because we weren't able to keep it, especially produce and dairy, and we lost a lot of opportunities because we just didn't have the space to hold it. Your grant funding allowed us to accept and not turn away anything of those needs. We get large orders from BJ's and Costco of dairy that we're now able to support that goes back into the community because we have that space because of that grant funding. We also had another grant funding that came through from your gracious support to allow for the lockers that are coming. It's something that we've used and we're excited to put to use with our residents. Just as a reminder, what that allows us to do is allow for 24-hour pickup for our constituents here in Gahanna. We have a lot of people who work third shift who aren't able to make it to our normal pantry hours. Homes where one car is being used by one person who's working, which doesn't allow for people to come to pantry hours. What the lockers will allow us to do is that for 24 hours a day, our constituents can come to pick up food. It allows them dignity and grace to be able to choose the food that they want. In the previous iterations that we've had for dropping off food at homes, we kind of have to pick and give them what we have. Often that means not including fresh produce or dairy because we're not able to refrigerate it. What this will allow us to do because of your generous grant funding that is going back to our community is allow for those pickups for those families. It also is going to allow for us to have temperature control, which allows us to include those choices. And it also allows them the dignity and respect to place those orders and come for their needs for their families. What I wanted to do was say thank you so much for your time, and in this season of thankfulness, grant funding from the community grant funds is essential for us at GRIN. So as a resident and the board chair, I thank you for that and continue to ask that you support that line item because it allows for our city to invest back into these nonprofits that need it so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Mr. Van Meter, are there any other speaker slips this evening?
No additional.
Thank you. All right, with that, I will close the public hearing. This is the first public hearing on the budget for fiscal year 2025. Our next public hearing on the budget for fiscal year 2025 will be at our next regular council meeting on Monday, December 2nd at 7 p.m. And we encourage residents to participate in this process. Thank you. All right, moving on to section F, the consent agenda is, let's see here. We have two items under section 3 of the consent agenda that do require second reading. Mr. Van Meter, would you please read ordinances 67 and 68 for the record?
Ordinance 0067-2024, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute an amended and restated joint self-insurance agreement with the Central Ohio Healthcare Consortium and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 0068-2024, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into contract with the Board of Health of the Franklin County General Health District, Franklin County Public Health, for the 2025 public health services and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Van Meter. We also have ordinance for second reading under section 4. This does not require emergency. Would you please read ordinance 69 for the record?
Ordinance 0069-2024, an ordinance amending the City of Gahanna Codified Ordinances, Section 505.14, dangerous and vicious animals.
Thank you, Mr. Van Meter. Is there a first to approve the consent agenda as published?
So moved.
I have a first by Mr. Schnetzer.
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Weaver. Any discussion on the items on the consent agenda? Hearing none, Mr. Van Meter, would you please call the roll?
Schnetzer?
Yes.
Weaver?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
McGregor?
Yes.
Padova?
Yes.
Renner?
Yes.
Bowers?
Yes. Motion carries. The consent agenda items are adopted as published. Second, section G of the agenda, ordinances for first reading and introduction. Mr. Van Meter, would you please identify the ordinances listed under section G of this evening's agenda?
First, I will do on a batch. These are ordinances 0070 through ordinance 0084. All of these are ordinances to amend various City of Gahanna codes, Part 11 zoning, chapter sections. First one consisting of 1103.08, 1109.01, 1109.02, 1109.05, 1109.06, 1111, 1113.01, 1117.02, 1101.09, 1105.01, 1105.02, 1107.01, 1117.07, 1121.01, 1121.06, 1123.01.
Thank you, Ms. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Next, we have ordinance 0085-2024, an ordinance authorizing supplemental appropriations, public safety fund for salaries and benefits. Ordinance 0086-2024, an ordinance establishing utility rates and amending Gahanna Codified Ordinances Title III, Public Utilities, Chapter 919, Water and Sewer Internal Review Board, Chapter 921, Sanitary Sewer Connections and Rental Rates, Chapter 927, Storm Sewers, Chapter 929, Water Connections and Rates, Chapter 933, Backflow Prevention, and Chapter 941, Garbage and Rubbish Collection and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 0087-2024, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an intergovernmental agreement for the repair and resurfacing of Morse Road, And lastly, ordinance 0089-2024, an ordinance to amend Gahanna Codified Ordinances, Chapter 151, Parks and Recreation Department, Section 151.03, Administration, and Chapter 153, Parks and Recreation Board, Section 153.01, Creation.
Thank you, Mr. Van Meter. Section H of the agenda, ordinances for second reading and adoption. Mr. Van Meter, would you please read ordinance 66 for the record?
Ordinance 0066-2024, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Pod Design for Academy Park improvements.
Thank you, Mr. Van Meter. Is there a first to adopt ordinance 66-2024? I have a first by Ms. Padova and a second by Mr. Schnetzer. Is there any discussion on this ordinance?
I do.
Mrs. McGregor.
I just have a few comments about overall the general, the plan to expand and improve Academy Park is a good plan. I do object to one part of it where the expansion of the parking lot. And, you know, we have a long history of purchasing and receiving parkland all the way back to when Mayor Spanovich first had our first park with Friendship Park. We've had a lot of acquisition through the generosity of developers. The city's received a capital grant for the Southwest floodplain. Sometimes we purchase land. Sun Point Park was brought on by Mayor Nealand. And when Academy Park was developed, one thing was promised to the residents, there would be no lighted fields. Now, maybe none of those residents are there, maybe none of them remember that, but that was one thing that was promised. And while this is not a lighting of the field, the expanded parking lot will be lighted, which will bring those lights closer to the residents. I think that there is value in vacant space, and it seems to me like we're programming every inch of Academy Park. We have expanded we have put a mountain bike trail in. We're expanding the shelter area to create a trailhead in a nicer facility. We're redoing the parking lot, and those are good things. But I think that perhaps if the parking lot is expanded, the expansion will be as large as the first expansion. And I went and looked at it, and the intersection of balls and cars in the parking lot is going to be probably a greater, because the parking lot will be closer to the baseball outfields, it'll be closer to the soccer fields and the basketball courts. I just think perhaps rather than expanding parking into these field areas, we should consider purchasing more land and more fields. If we need more fields, we should buy some land and create more fields. But just to keep crowding activities into a park so that every square inch is programmed, I just have a problem with that. And so I will not be supporting this because of the expansion of the parking lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. McGregor. Any other discussion on this item this evening? Yes, Mr. Weaver.
May I ask a question on maybe for Director Farrell? Is it possible to put some sort of barrier that would potentially reduce the risk of balls getting into the parking lot to potentially mitigate that concern?
Yes, that is a possibility, whether it's a natural feature or a man-made feature.
All right, thank you.
Any other discussion this evening? I've shared this already during committee, but again, just for posterity, I have an overall concern, I think, about continued hardscaping across the city. And I don't mean to single out this project because I do think that by and large, I'm looking forward to an improved shelter house and certainly understand the pressures on the parking lot. However, I think that little things that we do, I'm a big believer in us taking first steps to do small things to help manage stormwater runoff and help manage parking lot runoff that can affect our streams. And I know that the Parks Department feels, I think, similarly and are incredible stewards of our environment. So just again, for the record, I want to voice my very strong support for these environmental features, innovative sustainability features that we incorporate into this, and certainly look forward to future presentation of what this development design comes out to be. Okay. Yes, Mrs. McGregor.
I guess Academy Park is a floodplain which receives the flood water, so I don't understand how we can have drainage in a floodplain if it's set to receive the water.
Right now, there's no process in order for the runoff within the parking lot to receive or to retain. So the work that will be done on the parking lot will be to manage that effectively. What that looks like, we have not gone through the engineering of that, but that will be the process moving forward so that we have the proper infrastructure in order to manage that appropriately.
Thank you.
All right. If nothing else, then Mr. Van Meter, would you please call the roll?
Padova,
Yes.
Schnetzer,
Yes.
McGregor,
No?
Renner,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Ordinance 66 is adopted. Next section on the agenda this evening is Section I, Correspondence and Actions. Mr. Van Meter?
Thank you, Madam President. Tonight I have two things to share. One is on the agenda. It's the Ohio Division of Liquor Control notice regarding a new permit for Ohio Springs, Inc., doing business as Sheets at 725 Crescent Place. For the record, I did confer with the Division of Police. There were no objections by the division. Pursuant to our protocol, if there are no objections by council, I will go ahead and send the notice back that we do not request a hearing. And
Any
then,
discussion? No? Okay, thank you. Oh, Mrs. McGregor.
I will just say this is an excellent spot for Sheets.
I did not receive any public comment on this either.
All right, Gahanna, we're getting a Sheets. Hone. All right, next item, Mr. Van Meter.
The second item to share, council had its first reading tonight on adjusting the Parks and Recreation Board appointments. That was ordinance 0089. I will post public notice tomorrow for open applications through December 6th in anticipation of possible appointment consideration, and I will work with President Bowers on setting a special meeting schedule for consideration of those candidates.
Any discussion? All right.
Well, just real quick, so if it's, we'll be receiving applications or interest through the 6th?
Correct.
Does that give us
Yeah.
enough time to get that? I guess let me rephrase the question. Is the objective to fill it January 1st or January 2nd?
Yes.
Okay. Does that give us enough time?
So I think what we talked about is that we could have, if we have applications on hand sooner rather than later, we could start with interviews on the 25th and then have an interview on the 2nd and then the 9th and then the 16th if needed. Okay. All right, thank you. The next section on the agenda, we have under correspondence and actions from council. We use this to identify the annual report that was provided by Deputy Senior Director Weibensinger. Mr. Weibensinger, did you want to address this item? This is the 2022 report.
I just wanted to, at our last meeting, one of the questions was regarding the reporting of the Water and Sewer Advisory Review Board. And I had stated that they had met last year in '23. It was actually in '22. I had lost a year. But they had not met in '23 or '24, but I wanted to ensure that the record was correct.
Thank you, Mr. Weibensinger. Have we located a 2021 report yet at this point?
So I received an inquiry from Clerk Van Meter, so we'll look and see where that left off. That staffing has transitioned since 2021. This type of action is transitioned to a report to council as opposed to report on an agenda. So it could have been an email from a director to the clerk's office at that time. So it might, I don't know if I will have access to be able to pull that, but regardless, we will provide council with the 2020 and 2021 summaries of those meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Weibensinger. And we are not expecting a report for '24?
Correct.
Okay, because there have been no
There have been no
appeals.
meetings in '24 and none scheduled for the next 45 days. Once we, and this is in part of why we are reviewing and changing some of the ordinance as it relates to the Water Sewer Internal Review Board, so we can get the processes in place in 2025.
Great.
I would anticipate reports in 2025.
Great, thank you so much, Director Weibensinger. We really appreciate your follow-up on this item. All right, Section J, Representatives, CIC, Mr. Renner and Mr. Weaver.
I only have that we have a meeting tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock in the committee rooms.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Renner. Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, Mr. Weaver.
Thank you, Madam President. First, my thanks to Jess Hiltz and the Council Office for her assistance with putting together the report. The commission met on November 14th. We had the pleasure of hearing from Steve Steinauer, President and CEO of Huntington Bank. He discussed a variety of topics, including housing, interest rates, and the economic promise of the Central Ohio region. MORPC is adding 89 members 89 and 90, the Village of Alexandria and the City of Marion, respectively. I also want to give a shout out to our Director of Engineering, Tom Comelank, who was named as Vice Chair of the Transportation Advisory Committee. So congratulations and thank you for your continued service to our community. The next meeting is on December 12th. A couple items in the report that I would like to highlight. If you do click on the link in the agenda, there's several attachments worth perusing, including MORPC return on investment, as well as a listing of some of MORPC's successes this year. Two legislative items to highlight from the State House. Senate Joint Resolution 4, which would propose to amend the Ohio Constitution to renew bonding authority for funding public infrastructure improvements, did receive a first hearing in the Senate Finance Committee last week. House Bill 257, which would allow certain public bodies to conduct virtual meetings with specific policy requirements, did receive a third hearing in the Senate Government Oversight Committee on the 13th. MORPC likes to highlight a grant of the month, and this month's grant highlight is from the Ohio Department of Transportation. Particularly well-timed given our resolution this evening focusing on pedestrian and bicycle safety. ODOT is seeking projects that improve walking and biking safety and accessibility. This could include everything from the planning, studies, data collection, education, promotion, and infrastructure. Couple upcoming meetings to highlight. The Sustainable 2050 meeting will be held on December 5th. There's a hybrid option available, but the focus of the meeting is on developing sustainable tree canopies. Lastly, Money Mondays are held every Monday from 1 p.m. to 1:30. Several upcoming meetings listed in the report. And that is all for me.
Great, thank you, Mr. Weaver. Ms. Padova, Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, Holiday Lights celebration is this Sunday at Creekside from 3 to 6:30. There will be a lot of different things going on, including the train rides and food trucks, and then, of course, the Holiday Lights Market, which is a little bit different this year. So there will be shopping for all of the parents as well as the kid-friendly activities that you're used to seeing at Holiday Lights. Also new this year, Grin will have a booth to collect new coats for children that have been identified as needing a new winter coat. So if you would like to support that, you can bring a new winter coat and donate it to Grin at their booth at Holiday Lights this weekend. I believe that also the Santa Race is on December 7th, and there are still some volunteers needed for that. So if you would like to volunteer, you can go to visit Gahanna website to find more information on that. Again, that's the Santa race on December 7th. And the last thing is a map of Sunday's event will be available here in the next day or so online with where everything will be located on Mill Street and Creekside so that you can find everything easily. And that's all for me.
Thank you so much, Ms. Padova. Ms. Jones, School Board.
Yes, just one quick announcement and reminder that there is a regular school board meeting this Thursday, the 21st, at 6:30 at Clark Hall, in person and online. That's all for me.
Thank you, Councilwoman Jones. Section K, official reports. Mayor Jadwin.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to begin by thanking all the residents who showed up today to offer comments on the budget. This is one of 2 hearings that will be held. Thank you for paying attention. Thank you for being engaged and for offering your comments tonight. We very much appreciate that. Just a couple things. In a 1-week period, we celebrated 2 ribbon cuttings for significant projects in the city of Gahanna back on November 7th. I was honored to participate, and I know several others in this room were present as well, for the official ribbon cutting with leadership from Orthopedic One on their brand new facility at the Crescent in Central Park. I remember back in 2021 when we were talking about the idea of what kind of development could happen on that parcel. And I remember Councilman Schnetzer saying we need to ensure that we were getting the highest and best use of that property. I would say it doesn't get any higher or better than this one. This really is a once-in-a-lifetime economic development project for the city. At an investment of more than $20 million, with immediately adding more than 200 jobs to our community, high-quality, sustainable jobs. They've now become our largest private sector payroll provider in the city, and with the facility that they're now in, with the expectation and capacity to grow that workforce even further in the next few years. It truly is smart economic development. The other thing I would note with this project is that we broke ground on that project on October 13th of 2023. They opened their doors to patients on October 14th of 2024. 366 days from groundbreaking to the time that building opened for patients, which I think really truly speaks to the collaborative effort of our team. Several of them are sitting here today who really pushed that project forward, working with the team from Orthopedic One. But it shows what can be done when we all work together. Also, second project, equally impactful, was one celebrated a week later, this last Thursday, the 14th, and that was the ribbon cutting with the Rosen USA. It's a brand new expansion facility. It's about a 45,000 plus square foot facility that they added, which more than triples their footprint here in the city of Gahanna. They've been here for 10 years. And to put in perspective who they are a global company. They're based in Germany. They have 2 locations in the entire state, or in the entire country, United States, one in Houston and one in Gahanna. They could have gone anywhere. It was one of the first economic development projects I worked on as mayor. When COVID happened, we weren't sure that it was going to go forward, and it did indeed. So with their new facility, they expect to add to their workforce by more than 50% just in the next few years. So when we talk about smart economic development, both of these 2 projects are hit the nail on the head. Quality jobs, expanding businesses, quality businesses moving here. So great additions for our community. And then the only other thing I want to mention is over the weekend, the city of Gahanna was host to Leadership Ohio as they celebrated their graduation for their 2024 class. I had the privilege of attending that graduation ceremony along with directors Vollmer and Schultz. And it was a special day for us as we were there to witness the graduation of our own Senior Deputy Director of Administrative Services, Corey Weibensinger, who participated in this year's class and was a member of that class. If you don't know, Leadership Ohio is one of the state's premier leadership development programs. They bring together a group of select leaders from all around the state, from just a variety of sectors, to really help them hone and develop their leadership skills so that they can continue to move Ohio and their communities forward. We've had questions over the last few weeks about, as we've been talking about our budget, around how we support the professional development of our staff. This is a great example of how we do that. So Corey, congratulations to you and to all your fellow classmates, and we look forward to seeing the leadership growth that you continue to experience here as you serve the Gahanna community. Well done. Thanks for representing us so well. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. City Attorney Tamala Larison.
Yes, thank you. I will be brief tonight. Thank you very much for the passage of the ordinance amending dangerous and vicious animals. My next step is to be doing the last cleanup on the traffic code. I think I mentioned that a few months ago, that it got circumvented by the dangerous and vicious animals, so I'm working on that now to clean up that to get us into 2025 ordinance review. So if anybody has any burning desire to discuss traffic code with me, I'll be working on that this week. Thank you.
Mrs. Montgomery might take you up on that. Yes. All right, very good. I think we are on to council comment then, and I will start with Mrs. McGregor.
Thank you. It was nice to be at Ortho One for their ribbon cutting. That's really quite an accomplishment. And as our population ages, more of us will be taking advantage of their services, as I already have, with a knee replacement last year. The other thing I want to say is we had a sad thing at the Historical Society, and I don't think I mentioned it before, but our treasurer, Larry Zapp, who'd been our treasurer for 15 years, passed away in early October. He had been on Planning Commission here and in Grove City when he lived there previously. He served on CIC, I believe, for a time. And he was very, very active in the community. He actually served as treasurer for 4 different historical societies. So it's a big loss for all of us, and we have boxes and boxes of records we're trying to catch up with. So just wanted to extend our sympathies to his family. The other thing is, and we will not meet again before Thanksgiving, so I wish everybody happy Thanksgiving. And, it's a time of need. A lot of people are in need this year, and if you have a few bucks, Grin can always use an extra donation this time of year. Between now and the end of the year, they have a lot of activities going on, and we'll be handing out a lot of food between now and then. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. McGregor. Councilwoman Jones?
Thank you. Also, a thank you to the residents who attended the budget hearing this evening. We appreciate you being engaged in this process. Tagging on to what Mrs. McGregor said about a season of thanks, and I know oftentimes this time of year folks want to volunteer. Councilwoman Bowers and Padova and I got a chance to stop by Grin, and they mentioned the need for extra volunteers, particularly on traffic control, since they will be doing some extra giveaways this year. So as everyone is thinking about fulfilling their grateful hearts and serving their community, might you think about that as an opportunity this year. Also wanted to just say a congratulations to Mr. Weibensinger as well. I have enjoyed watching your journey on LinkedIn through this program, so happy graduation. And I know that that's a time commitment between all of the things that you do at home and here for the community, so congratulations there. Last, I just wanted to share an update. As folks know, I am super passionate about celebrating Juneteenth for our community next year, and have since put together a committee of residents to help plan. And we are 2 meetings in, and plans are moving along swimmingly, if I might say. We have partnered with Lori Kappas at Visit Gahanna, and we'll be aligning forces with Creekside Blues and Jazz, and actually have the opportunity to utilize one of those stages on the Saturday of Blues and Jazz. So we are super excited about that. Lots of work still to be done. So next steps include funding and sponsors. So we will be soliciting for those. And then our subcommittee, which is all made of residents, will meet and solidify plans with the goal of having our solid plan in January. Well, next up, January, solid plan by March. So also just wanted to say thank you to Parks and Rec staff, Chelsea Hepbert, Brian Gill, and like I mentioned, Lori Kappas from Visit Gahanna, who have given us great guidance and have been really appreciated through this process. And I will keep everyone updated as we move along, but just wanted to let you know where we are as of right now. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for your work, Councilwoman Jones. Councilwoman Padova.
Thank you. Thank you to all of the speakers who came out this evening to give us feedback on the budget. Resident feedback is always appreciated, so thank you for being involved. For all of the parents out there with little ones, I am very excited about the Gahanna Branch Library's Snowball event that they're doing this year. So mark your calendars for Friday, December 6th from 6:30 to 8:30. At the Gahanna Branch Library, there will be music, stories, crafts, and visits from a special guest. I hear he's going to be wearing red. And it is a free event, and they will be taking donations for GRIN as well, in lieu of any admission to that. And also congratulations to Mr. Weibensinger on your graduation. That's all.
Thank you, Councilwoman Padova. Councilman Renner.
Yeah, thank you. At the risk of actually sounding redundant, I definitely wanted to give a shout out to all the residents that actually gave us input on the budget. And could you do me a favor and go get your neighbors and come in here? We really deeply appreciate the time and effort that it actually takes to walk up to this podium, but also deeply appreciate whenever we hear from residents. And definitely the ones that actually have reached out to me personally. But I have also keep inviting people to come down here, please, because everybody needs to hear what our residents are saying. The second thing is I want to also share my congratulations to Mr. Corey Weibensinger. Thank you so much for everything. And Jamil stole my thunder a little bit because I too have really enjoyed watching you grow inside Gahanna. And so thank you. It's a little hard for me to see, but yeah. But seriously, thank you and congratulations. And that's all.
Thank you. Councilman Schnetzer.
Yeah, again, to steal Mr. Renner's words, at the risk of sounding redundant, thanks to everybody that came out, particularly and spoke, particularly in regards to the budget. I know that municipal finance is not the most exciting thing in the world, but it is important to hear from the residents and for us to receive what is important to you. So thanks for coming out and spending, I guess, about an hour and 10 minutes of your time with us. Madam Mayor, it's ironic that you mentioned Ortho 1. I was on Saturday just driving right by there, and I saw the big logo on the facade of the building there. And it was just a quick trip down memory lane about all the discussions. And you're right. I mean, that was a slam dunk project and one that any community in the region would be happy to have. And we're very fortunate that they chose Gahanna as their location. And then to piggyback off of Mrs. McGregor, happy Thanksgiving to everybody in advance here. It is arguably my favorite holiday, for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, it centers around food. But second, I think it's a pure holiday, purely American holiday. And I'm going to steal a quote from, I believe it is Cicero, that says that gratefulness is not only the highest of all virtues, but the parent of all the others. And so, in short, when you have a grateful heart, you have a tendency to be more wise, more humble, more kind, and more patient. So hopefully we take a moment during this holiday to take a step back and recognize that we're very thankful for a lot of things in this country. That's all from me.
All right, Mr. Weaver.
Thank you, Madam President. Very tough to follow Mr. Schnetzer sometimes. So first, thank you everyone for coming out. Do echo my colleagues' comments that we greatly appreciate the feedback and input. We do value it. We do take it into consideration. So thank you very much. Director Weibensinger, thank you for your continued service to our community and congratulations on this tremendous milestone. And you did all of this while leading several initiatives with the city. You're a busy man, so we appreciate you and thank you very much. It was wonderful to celebrate the opening of Orthopedic One. I know several of my colleagues were there as well. The mayor and many of her administrative team were there. Mr. Schnetz is right. It is the envy of many other communities to have that top-tier business right here in the heart of Gahanna. So very exciting. And I believe the rest of my comments are better reserved for our next meeting. So I encourage residents to stick around for Finance Committee.
Excellent. All right, thank you. A few remarks. First, I would like to start off by thanking Senior Director Volmer for sharing with us a strategic plan council update schedule. Starting on December 16th, council will host regular, I think about every 45 to 60 days, updates from Director Volmer or our vendor Planning Next that is supporting us through this project. So thank you very much, Director Volmer, for that. On this Friday, November 22nd, I can't believe we're already this way far through November, Councilwoman Jones and I are hosting a budget and breakfast at 8:15 at Cafe Creekside. So for residents who either came this evening or who didn't and would like to talk further and share with us your thoughts or hear some of our thoughts about where we are with the budget process, please join us for a wonderful breakfast at one of our favorite small businesses in Gahanna at 8:15. I wanted to shout out another small business just as that is having a grand opening. This is truly a success story here in Gahanna. The Bibliophile Candle Company started off as a in your home, at markets project, certainly a labor of love by Kylie Cooper Cyrus, a well-known figure here in the community. She has moved on to a brick and mortar, and so we are so excited to celebrate her new brick and mortar that is opening on North Hamilton Road. You can find out more at thebibliophilecandleco.com if you'd like to know the location and all about the grand opening this weekend. And then I did want to mention a big thank you to the Veterans Memorial volunteers. Last Monday, we were able to celebrate Veterans Day, and so thank you very much to Becky and Tom Nealand, and to all the people who made that possible. Mayor Jadwin and I were able to present that joint resolution proclamation. A number of our council members were able to attend as well. And that was really, it's always a great event, and it was especially a great event this year. So it really helped, I think, continue to move us together, right? We always just have to take one step in front of the other. And with that, I also wanted to appreciate those who came out this evening to speak about the budget. This was really a testament, I think, to how we can engage in civil discourse about things that we may or may not agree on. We all agree that we want to protect our community, to make sure our community is a great place to live, work, and play. And a lot of us have put a lot of hours and labor into that. And all of us who I think spoke tonight are a testament to how people who have sometimes differing views on things can still be dedicated to the same vision and to the same values that drive our community forward. So thank you so much for engaging in civil discourse this evening. I welcome you to come back. We're going to continue this. This is what this is about, and this is why I love local government so much. So with that, we will adjourn this evening's council meeting and advance into Finance Committee.
Do we need 5 minutes, or are we ready to dive right in?
Usually the
I'd
one
run to the restroom.
minute. 5 minutes? All right.
I don't want to be the one that asks for it.
Finance Committee for November 18th, 2024. Just a quick reminder, I'll say kind of the formalities first. You know, the first item on the budget, or the only item on the agenda, is continuing our discussion of the 2025 budget proposal. Unlike years past where we've taken the entire budget as a whole, this year we're breaking it up kind of piecemeal by department. The focus of this evening's presentation and discussion will be public service and engineering budgets. So with that, I guess I will turn it over to Director Vollmer.
Thank you. So we'll start off where we did have the other weeks with, today we're going to start with public service. Just one note to this presentation, all capital items for both departments will be presented at the end. So we'll go through public service, expenditures and revenue, staffing, and then we'll switch over to engineering and then do all capital at the end.
Thank you.
So for the 2024 achievements for public service, it's divided into some of the divisions that they have. For fleet, they created a comprehensive capital equipment replacement schedule in conjunction with the CIP. The streets division was able to replace an updated 20-mile-per-hour school zone flashers with the LED bulbs. The utilities division responded to over 1,200 service calls and nearly 5,000 Ohio Utilities Protection Service tickets. And then customer service, we successfully hired staff, including a supervisor, and transitioned to a citywide customer service model that's housed under public service. For the 2025 priorities, the department looks to establish an in-house street sweeping program, establish a sign shop, get back to the leak detection program, hire a facilities superintendent, and then assist in the coordination and planning for the move to the municipal complex. The next couple slides go over service general fund expenditures. Public service is funded out of a variety of funds. So these are the general fund expenditures, followed by the special fund expenditures of the street fund and the state highway fund. The next slide has the proprietary fund expenditures. These are primarily the stormwater, water capital, sewer, and sewer capital funds. Are there any questions on expenditures?
Council, anything on those handful of slides? Nope. All right, back to you.
The next slides cover the service revenue. So the first slide is the general fund revenue, followed in the same order by the special funds and then the proprietary funds. We did receive a question on page 104, what is the driver of the $439,000 anticipated reduction in fines and fee revenue? And that is the cable franchise fees were moved to the right-of-way fund. So they were moved out of that fund and into the right-of-way fund. Any additional questions on expenditures or revenues? The next slide is the staffing requests.
Council, anything on those handful of slides? Director Vollmer, can you go over that again with the cable franchise fees being, I guess, repositioned from one fund to another? Or what's sort of the thinking behind that?
So we did a little bit more research on the cable franchise fees, and really the purpose of those fees really meets more of what the right-of-way fund is set up for, and it's for managing those right-of-ways that the cable franchises are using. So after review, it just made more sense that it follow the other right-of-way funds that we're collecting.
And that's never been, I guess, discussed in any of our audits or anything like that when we turn our books over to the state or anybody else?
No.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
For the 2025 staffing request for the Department of Public Service, under the Priority 1 category, there's a request for a facility superintendent and one service maintenance worker 2 for facilities. And in the Priority 2 category is a public service seasonal laborers and 3 of those. The next slide has the org chart that shows those different priority levels. Also, one of the questions we received was, please explain how the divisions identified on page 99 fit within the org chart depicted on page 101. So you'll see on this org chart, the all caps And underlined are those divisions that are talked about at the beginning of the Department of Public Service narrative. So utility billing division, we'll be working to rename that the customer service division, and that has the customer service supervisor, a management analyst, and 3 customer service specialists. The facilities division, it exists now. It currently has 1 facilities foreman in it. That's a unionized position. So the budget request has a facilities superintendent and then the addition of a 1 service maintenance worker, 2. That was outlined in the staffing study. The water, sanitary, and stormwater divisions are where the utilities folks fit in. So the utility superintendent and then those associated employees that assist with those water and utility functions. The streets division has a superintendent, a foreman, and maintenance workers as well, and that's where those seasonal laborers would report through. It was inadvertently left off in the budget book. My apologies. The fleet division also falls under public service, has a superintendent and those fleet technicians, and then the administrative division has the manager of projects and the program and compliance administrator. They oversee and work with our Ohio EPA and federal EPA reporting requirements.
Just kind of like a process question. That outline, I believe, answered some of the questions here. I'm trying to track and make
Yeah,
sure
oh,
that-
sorry. Yeah, they're on the next slide.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Ms. Bauer?
yeah, also just a process question on this. Will you update page 101 with this org chart when you present the final budget? Okay, all right, thank you.
Anything else from council on that?
Not right now.
So that was the first question there on page 99 and 101, the divisions identified within the org chart. The next question we received related to staffing was on page 102. Please be prepared to discuss the apprenticeship program for fleet technicians, potential industry changes, and any anticipated costs. So one of the 2024 objectives was to establish apprenticeship program for fleet technicians because we did have 1 fleet technician retire and 2 more that have given notice of retirement as well. So we are working with local career centers to establish that program. We'll be continuing that objective into 2025. The industry changes that we're looking to work through this apprenticeship program are EV vehicles to ensure that our fleet technicians are aware of how to work on those EV vehicles so they don't always have to be sent out. And then also the plan for known retirements is another reason to start an apprenticeship program. Any costs would be for interns should we be able to establish a partnership with the local career center to get those fleet technician and apprenticeship program moving forward.
Council, any follow-up to those items? All right, please continue.
Next question is from page 103. Please be prepared to discuss the need for the facilities superintendent position. The staffing study references the need for the role if there's a facilities division. When is it anticipated the division will be created in the hiring of a superintendent? So there is currently a facilities division, but it is the only person in it right now is a facilities foreman. That's a unionized position. We do in the budget, it was the facility superintendent was budgeted for 7 months, so that would be anticipated a summer hire date in the May-June timeframe. The facilities superintendent will assist with the day-to-day operations of city facilities, including a municipal complex, the service garage, and the fleet are shared with the schools, the fleet garage. This superintendent will ensure that our facilities are safe, sustainable, and efficient, and that they operate within a set budget. They'll also manage the facilities budget and any contracts associated with running the different buildings that the city operates out of.
Council, any follow-up on that item?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Weaver.
Thank you. Thank you, Director. I appreciate you, the little back and forth we had on this question as well. Appreciate it. Can you speak to what the facilities superintendent would be doing, I guess, prior to the transition to 825?
Yep, so when we talked about when we would hire that individual, and Mr. Schultz can talk further about the construction schedule, but based on the construction schedule, we, as you are aware, we have many subcontractors out on that project. So, for example, when the HVAC is done and we're training on the HVAC and getting contracts in place, and when the warranties are out, the superintendent would really be responsible for that. Those types of tasks are management tasks. They're not appropriate for a union employee to do. And so that's one example, but there are many things on this property and in the new building that a management level employee will need to, from contracting to ensuring staffing's properly. We're still under the evaluation if we should have a contract service for cleaning or hire our own individuals. And so that still needs flushed out as well. And so with the anticipated move from getting existing things to the new building, to people, to whatever is in my office, those things all need to be managed. And the facility superintendent will assist Mr. Schultz and I in that transition over to the new complex. And then once we're in the complex, they would be responsible for running the facility and managing this property while the city still owns it as well, and the service complex.
So would it be fair to say that at the moment, the workload is falling between or among you and Director Schultz and Director Anvers?
Yes.
Yeah, for 825 specifically.
I'm sorry, I guess I should rephrase. The workload that the facility superintendent would be doing for the remainder of this year, or excuse me, for the ones hired in 2025, trying to get my dates straight, excuse me. Those duties would otherwise fall where? But for that role being added is what I'm trying to drive at.
Yeah. So if we were not to hire a facility superintendent in 2025, and the Director Anvers would be responsible for that, because these a unionized employee, per the collective bargaining statute in the Ohio Revised Code, this is not something that they would be doing in a unionized position.
Yeah, we're not quite sure exactly how many preventative maintenance and service contracts we're going to have along with 825. There's not really what I'm going to refer to as a building management system inside of this particular building that controls the sophisticated HVAC systems and so on and so forth as it relates to, a more modern facility, right? So there's training on the building as it relates to HVAC and building controls. There's training on the building as it relates to access controls and security, which is primarily the police department and folks in the communication center. But this superintendent has ultimate management responsibilities over those contracts to make sure something is functioning correctly. A great example that I'd give you is that if the access controls off the front of the building aren't allowing people in and out, after hours or something like that. In that regard, it's not going to fall on it's not the task of the police department to report. It's the task of the police department to report, but who do they report to? Are they reporting that directly to Sean in order for him to achieve that or get that service taken care of? Or are they going to the facility superintendent to do that? Which it's just a greater separation of work, because it's not really director level work at the same time. Preventative maintenance schedules and those things, making sure the contractors come in and are changing filters and doing those types of maintenances on HVAC systems. There's some other systems inside of the facility they'd manage. Well, depending on, they'd either manage the janitorial staff or they'd manage the janitorial contract for the facility to make sure that it was being cleaned appropriately, so on and so forth, and kept up the way in which we would want it to be kept up. And then, as Director Vollmer said, obviously we'd still have this particular property at that time, and then they'd also have the service garage and those properties to manage and maintain at the same time, where currently, as Director Vollmer indicated, right, that's currently being done by a foreman, and he can handle potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in contracts that, per the collective bargaining agreement, are not appropriate at that particular level to be managed and executed upon.
So just for example, thank you very much. So taking the janitorial staff or contractors, for example, That work is currently being overseen by,
It's technically overseen by Mr. Anvers.
Okay.
Correct.
technically, but in reality or in practice?
Practice, the foreman is the one overseeing that contract.
Okay. No, that's helpful. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anything further? Ms. Bowers?
Yeah, just kind of on the other side of this, the service maintenance worker too. That's an unclassified?
That is a unionized position.
It is unionized.
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further from council?
The last question before we move on to engineering for public service, page 138. This page states that the garage maintenance is a planned expenditure from the Public Service Special Fund in 2025. Please clarify if this is maintenance to the garage or the maintenance work to be performed within the garage. This is for the maintenance of the Creekside parking garage. We have a lot of garages around, so that is the Creekside parking garage. That's the planned expenditure there.
Any follow-up from council? All right, back to you.
If there are no other questions specifically related to public service, we'll move on to engineering.
Anything final from public service on the ops side?
Mr. Amherst isn't going anywhere. When we get to capital, if there are capital questions as it relates to service, we have the podium available to us. He can come back and join us.
Welcome to the table, Mr. Comley.
I'm sorry, I don't think Mr. Anvers had enough to say tonight.
I think he's just fine with that.
For engineering, the 2024 achievements Mr. Comlek would like to share this evening are the completion of the Taylor Station Roundabout, water systems improvements such as the water tower, Havens Corners, and Claycraft water line replacements. We were able to staff the engineering department and promote from within this year, and then the annual street and sidewalk programs. 2025 priorities for the Department of Engineering include the Creekside flood mitigation to finalize design, permitting, and a bid for construction, the West Gahanna sanitary relief sewer, the adoption of the comprehensive transportation and mobility plan and the integration into the CIP, and then the Wynn Ridge Bridge project. The next slides are the expenditures for engineering. Engineering is funded out of the special fund, also known as the Public Service Fund. And the following slide is the projected revenues for that fund as well. And now Mr. Schultz has way more slides than I just had on the CIP.
I didn't realize she was going to be that quick. You guys have questions on?
Yeah, anything on the ops side of engineering from council? All right.
Sweet.
You're on the hot seat, Mr.
On the hot seat, on to capital requests. Capital requests this evening are broken up into largely three categories. Transportation and mobility, section 4 of the CIP document. Utility systems, water, sanitary, and storm, generally section 5 of the document. And then we're going to go over a lot of different equipment type purchases and such, which is found in section 8 of the document. The equipment, as stated in the last presentation last week, that's one of the categories that kind of spans multiple departments and has been broken up. We're going to get to see the equipment and such that is generally related to wheeled assets and such this evening. So jumping right in from a capital projects update standpoint, a lot of these, especially as it relates to engineering, some of the projects that were captured or completed in 2024 was similar to the accomplishments of the department. Obviously, engineering in large part, and service for that matter, work on maintenance and capital projects largely. Some of these are redundant, right? But one of the ones that I know, speed awareness signs is a very, very simple one. But one of the things that I'd really like to highlight in this particular instance is this was actually a project where we procured those materials, and through the new street superintendent, we actually did the installation of those signs ourselves, as opposed to in years past we would have hired out that particular work, which did save us. On the whole, I believe they saved us about 40% per sign at installation. pretty minimal as it relates to capital budgeting and the actual ask itself, but it really does illustrate the services and such that Mr. Adverse is really trying to infuse into the department and really moving the department back in a direction in which I think it might have been a number of years ago, but at some point we were relying more on contractors than our internal staff. But we're really repositioning ourselves to do some of this particular work. Obviously, some of the highlights, the street rebuild and asphalt overlay program, sidewalk maintenance program, as previously stated. But we also were able to paint nearly 300 streetlights again this particular year. I know in years past we had tried. There were some issues with getting bids and so on and so forth. But in a problem-solving way, right? We approached vendors to stay under that bid because we actually put out a bid. We had a request for bid go before you folks at some particular point in time. Didn't receive any substantive bids. So then we went out and asked for quotations, which were below a bid threshold, so we couldn't do as many streetlights as we liked. But we didn't just stop at doing the bid and not getting any and saying, oh, sorry, we couldn't paint any streetlights. So while we only painted 300, we wanted to paint 600. We still did a portion of the work. And hopefully this year, through some advancement of bid documents and those things, simplifying bid documents, that is, maybe we get a bid and we're able to do 600 this year. But if not, we would still do 300 next year. We'll get into some of those things. Claycraft water line, the Havens Corner water line. And then we did numerous. I think one of the fleet accomplishments was the condition assessment of all of our wheeled assets. And then the continued, not the continued, but the purchasing of and decommissioning of some assets, namely police cruisers and other pieces of equipment that basically make this city go and give us the ability to provide the services that we do. A couple of things that are still in progress, obviously, engineering projects. They're not quick hitters. I talked about quick hitters and purchasing a piece of equipment as a quick hitter last week. But Hamilton Road Bridge construction, right? That's a project that was in design for a number of years and will be in construction for a number of multiple months, right, in order to get through completion. Same thing with the Tech Center Drive, traffic signal, comprehensive transportation mobility plan. I really have that on here, not so much from a capital standpoint, but that will ultimately drive the capital plan into the future and really reprogram the plan, reprogram the capital investment plan in years moving forward. And then everybody's favorite, the West Side relief sewer project that we presented on in these chambers a couple of months ago at this particular point in time. I know you guys probably got questions about individual projects. We're going to get into those if maybe we can hold those for a moment. Or I can pause here and see what kind of comments or questions you might have.
You plan to cover, as part of your prepared remarks, some of the questions that were proposed?
Yes, correct. Yeah, so I got the same setup that Director Vollmer had, where anything specifically asked will end up getting answered.
Maybe I'll ask my colleagues if there's any follow-up to what you just said. Anything from council?
Yeah.
Ms. Bowden.
Thank you. Just quickly, is the speed awareness signs, how many more? Are there more that are intended for 2025 to be installed, or have we completed installing what we plan to install?
Correct. We have completed installation of what we planned on installing. There was no additional asks for 2025. We worked in coordination with the police department in order to identify those particular locations. Through the savings of us doing the work, we were actually able to add a fourth sign. We were able to add a fourth sign, but we haven't had any additional requests, internal requests to add a sign. I believe there might have been one request, residential request to add a sign by them, and I don't necessarily know that I don't know if you consider a Facebook comment an actual request.
I think this is a good time to just kind of also mention that we have an upcoming CIP Advisory Committee meeting on December 10th, and that this is where these projects are identified and discussed, at least kind of in a high level and collaboratively with council as well. So correct. I just wanted to make sure that I shouted that out and said that's basically how we continue to identify these and have awareness of where we are, and we're really grateful for this process to be moving forward in this way.
Anything further from council? All right, back to you, Mr. Schultz.
Okay, so where we've started every week as we've gone through capital here. Right here, I have highlighted on the screen the 3 different sections that we're going to go over this evening: transportation, mobility, utility systems, and then a portion of that $2.45 million in equipment. We're only going to take basically, again, the wheeled assets. But you see in the pie chart there the percentage that's tacked on to each one of them. Obviously, I think just by way of the table, anyone can quickly see that the biggest category of capital investment in this particular instance is transportation and mobility. That's honestly, not honestly, that's exactly where we're going to start this evening. But we've identified, that shouldn't say 15, that should say 5 requests as it relates to transportation and mobility. The next slide is the detail as we get in here. But what you're looking at here is, I'm going to have to apologize in advance. This slide, this capital number here, I have to update this. I will update this when I send this slide deck to Clerk Van Meter for publishing with the minutes. But that's not going to add up to your $8.485 million. But there's a good portion that does come from the capital investment fund, and then the other funds as it relates TIF, water capital, storm, and permissive tax as well. Again, I will update this slide before I send it to Clerk Van Meter. I do know that this $8.485 million is the correct number. That will be illustrated on this next slide here, where we break down the individual programs and projects. This slide is broken into 2 different categories. This one is broken into capital maintenance projects. So anytime you see TRCM, CM stands for capital maintenance, and these are the 5 capital maintenance requests for 2025 that do total this $7.295 million. Capital maintenance is basically a project in which is cyclical. It runs annually. So think of our street maintenance program, whether it's an asphalt overlay program, our street rebuild program, our sidewalk maintenance program, our ability to update traffic cabinets and such. That's number 4 here on the list. And then street light maintenance and upgrades. So streetlight maintenance and upgrades, that I'm going to start from the bottom up. This is the project that would get streetlights painted. This is a project that would get those heads converted from from an incandescent bulb into an LED bulb. And then moving up the list here, traffic control maintenance and upgrades. This is basically the infrastructure that runs a traffic signal itself, right? Your pedestrian lights, your crosswalks, the actual red, yellow, green signal itself, so on and so forth. The detection cameras that run the intersection, and so on. And then the first 3, the big 3, if you would, the majority of the $7.295 million is really the street program, what we refer to as the street program. The street program is broken down into 2 different programs: an overlay program and then a rebuild program. This year, 2024, is the first year in which we were running the sidewalk maintenance program and the street program inside of the same geographies, right? So one of the notes that I'd like to make here on this particular slide is that we're going to basically be investing about $6.2 million in our street rebuild program in 2025. Okay, what you're looking at in asphalt overlay and the street rebuild programs, both CM01 and CM02, both of these projects here include the sidewalk work that will take place inside of those areas. What you see in this $750,000 as CM03, that's the sidewalk maintenance or the look back program that we were asked to create, looking back to 2022, I believe. I believe we're looking back three years from 24. So maybe we're going back to 21, 22, and 23, and then continuing with 24, following in succession with what it is that we're doing currently. You'll also note inside of here the water capital fund and the stormwater fund is also hit. That is because we're also including water line replacement and stormwater improvements in some of these locations, which gives us the ability to tap other funds in addition to just the capital fund. And then the one other quick note is that
24 consecutive projects are being considered, all of which are related to current activity.
Wow.
Google. Thank you very much, Google.
Is Google listening to you?
Apparently, Google's listening to me. But the street rebuild program, we're doing a portion of Rocky Fork Drive, and then we're doing Laurel and Heil, which both fall within the TIF district. And we're going to utilize some TIF dollars in order to rebuild those couple of streets there.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Anything from council regarding transportation and mobility capital maintenance? Mr. Weaver?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director. And I appreciate this slide very much because I was trying in my prep to go through and find the different funds and try to add up a total of the investment in our streets. So the $6.2 million is greatly appreciated. I was trying to do a quick look at last year's budget to get a rough guesstimate of what that investment was for the current year that we're in. Do you happen to know?
It's commiserate. It's very similar. The thing that you're looking at here when we talk the 6.2 million, right? Yeah. You're talking water line and sidewalk also.
Yes.
Whereas the number that you're going to see for 2024 as it was published is likely only the actual street, curb and gutter. So if you were to look back in the CIP for what we allocated in 25, we have to do some math in order to determine exactly what that was. We can get those numbers based on the various contracts that we have signed for each of those programs.
I would appreciate that, and certainly I recognize that the cost of construction and concrete and asphalt, it's all gone up, and so everybody's trying to do more with less, essentially. So I would just advocate that I don't want to see our funding for the street program being reduced. I think it's one of the best programs that we have in the city, and kudos to everybody who works diligently on the street program. So I'd be curious to know what the numbers are. I think there's a top line reference to 3.6 million for 2023, but I know that's the year prior. So in the 2024 budget, but that may be even I think for the prior year. So
Actually can probably help with that.
Oh, thank you.
According to the bids that were accepted for the 2024 street and sidewalks, it was about 4.9 million. Additional cracked micro surface is about another 30,000. We had some the golf course paths were wrapped into that contract. All in all, it's about $5.3 million, and then you have contingencies and inspections on top of that. But that would contain street and sidewalk program, as well as, again, cracked steel microsurface, as well as about almost 290,000 of that was the golf course paths, which were rolled into that. So take that piece out of that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, sorry.
Anything further from council? Ms. Bauer?
Thank you. Just to make sure I think, so this is a great conversation, and I think really speaks to the importance of how seriously we're taking the mandate from our residents, and so I just want to I think that's what we're trying to communicate. But the question I guess I wanted to make sure I understood correctly, the $750,000 that's allocated to the sidewalk maintenance program, is that the 3-year catch-up plus 2025?
That's no, that's a portion of the 3-year catch-up.
Okay.
Yep.
Do we know like what percentage are we at?
Caught up, right?
Yeah.
So we didn't do catch up in 2024 because it came what we refer to as late. We're currently in the process of figuring out exactly what the economy of scale is and our ability to program, so on and so forth. So we're breaking that 3-year lookup. How many years do we have to break up that 3-year lookup so that we can continue to match resources to projects, basically? Because basically what you find, we have a balance. What I'd say, I know we're going to get into a little bit more of a conversation here when we get to the questions here. There's a question about maintaining the service level. Maintaining a service level based on a number is not actually the goal and objective of the capital improvement plan. The goal of the capital improvement plan is to match resources with projects. So to say every year, let's use the numbers we used last year, we got a $5 million number last year, we had a $6 million number this year. We can't necessarily guarantee based on resources that we're going to actually be able to maintain exactly those numbers year after year after year. Because while we might at the same time, and you guys also referred to, I think the question referred specifically to service level. what happens when inflation, if you would, or the cost of construction is outpacing our revenue, right? At that particular point in time, if the service level is X number of feet, miles of road rebuilt, how are we doing that based on a revenue projection that isn't that's being outpaced by the actual cost of construction? The only way to do it in that particular instance is to cut other things, and that's obviously within your guys' purview as the holders of the purse to say, well, no, we don't want to do this. We want to put that over here, and we want to do more in this particular example, streets. But that's one of the balances, and that's one of the things that the CIP Advisory Committee really needs to do is really take lists of projects and assign resources to them. Because while issue 12 is great and TIF monies are great, we all know, I think we heard from the podium earlier this evening, that the number of projects and the amount of deferred maintenance that we have actually, in some instances, outscales the amount of resource and financial resource that we have. And obviously, I think that we're doing our best to position ourselves in a good and great place. But at some particular point, especially when we have spikes for different projects and such, you may have to see a reduced street program in order to achieve a project. That was one of the reasons, I think a couple weeks ago, we talked about Academy Parking. One of the reasons why we pushed the parking lot out a couple of years was so that we can survive, strong word, sorry, that's probably the wrong word, we can take that spike in ask and spread that out over a number of years so that multiple things end up getting done and accomplished.
So I want to jump in here. I know we have some other questions, but
Sure.
regarding, so that wasn't my question regarding the service level, but I do want to, it kind of got the gears turning in my head, because I remember many, many moons ago when we used to talk about the pavement condition rating, or PCR. So I guess the first question is that still a metric that we use or employ in this whole process?
So we've recently, within the last 2 years, transitioned to an optical pavement scan to give a pavement condition index, which is a slightly different calculation than the pavement condition rating. That pavement condition rating also was indicative of a curb and gutter score as well. So what we'd otherwise need to do is take the PCI rating and then the curb rating, combine those two together to formulate that PCR to get a like-for-like, apples-to-apples comparison.
So we're tracking it, though, right? I mean, we're
Generally,
measuring,
yes.
There's some numerical level. And where I'm going with this is I remember the S curve where, on the y-axis was the PCR or PCI, and on the x-axis was time, and there was sort of a drop-off, and then it kind of leveled out. And, forgive me, the actual numbers as far as number of years and sort of average PCR are eluding me at the moment, but bringing this back to the topic of service level, if I heard you correctly, Mr. Schultz, the service level, as you were describing, is more dollars allocated to the program, and I'm just curious if we're, regardless of the dollars, whether or not we're still able to maintain or target a certain pavement condition rating with regard to the streets program.
So let me clarify real quick. I believe the intent of the question was that service level was defined as dollars.
Okay.
I'm defining the service level as need, not dollars.
I would agree with you that in PCR or PCI being indicative of need, right? If the average
Correct.
PCR is 60 in the
Yep.
city and our goal is 80, then we're deficient and probably need to catch up.
Correct. I agree with that. Yes.
Chairman, if I could just ask, I guess I'm not following which question on our sheets is this service level question that's being
So I have questions
referenced.
up on the screen here. And I believe it's under this third bullet here. The narrative mentioned potentially tapping the public's, and bear with me here because this is how the question was delivered.
It's up in public.
The Public Service Special Revenue Fund to support expansion of street maintenance projects. Then when you go down here, the third sub-bullet is, and maintain the 2024 service level that would be the anticipated cost given the increased cost of maintaining the service. Again, a little bit tricky wording, but the way in which we've interpreted that is to basically mean that the 2024 service level, the 5 million that the mayor spoke about, plus inflation, and we need to maintain that service level, which to us was a dollar amount and not necessarily a need-based ask. And I think what I'm sitting here trying to say is that we need a need-based ask, not a money-based ask, because revenue, finances are they're not limitless, right? And we need to make sure that we program and we're doing things across multiple sectors and not just, if Director Burry programs, and I'm just going to use simple math, if Director Burry programs $10 million in revenue, and we're going to use $6 million of that 10 million in projected revenue to go to the streets program, that's 60% of your revenue going into a streets program, and we have many other needs in order to take care of. And then when I throw inflation on top of it, I'm at 7 million, but sorry, Director Burry didn't necessarily increase the revenue projection to 10 and 12 million dollars. Now I'm dealing with, now I'm using 70% of our dollars to go towards the street program, and it's hard in that particular instance to take care of other needs in a meaningful way. Sure, we can do smaller, we basically have $3 million to play with at that particular point in time, and the Parks and Rec program itself was $3 million that we just presented, and then that's only really two things.
I'll just add before we get to some more questions here. I agree. We don't need gold-plated streets, that it's a bit of a balancing act, but I also would just respond that the residents have kind of a minimum standard.
Correct.
That's been discussed ad nauseum in these chambers through the years, and so I guess my expectation is that we've got a plan to reach that minimum standard.
Correct.
With that, Ms. Bowers.
Well, I think to piggyback on that, and maybe this is being in the weeds too much, but if I remember right, the PCR, and I'm only familiar with PCRs, I'm assuming is the PCI on a 100-point scale as well?
Correct.
Is it roughly the same, like 70, below 70 is like really undesirable, and you really want to get yourself into that 80?
Really undesirable would be in the 50 to 60 category, where you're starting to look at a major rebuild of a facility.
And acceptable is 75 and over, 70
Yep.
and over? Okay. So if I remember right, I think that service basis, maybe, we were looking at based on a PCR number of getting our streets all over 70 or 75. Does that sound right? And
The 70 handle sounds familiar, and I think some of the logic behind that is that was kind of like the most efficient level, right?
Can I just, real quick, this might save some time. So in the annual comprehensive financial report, there's an RSI section, which is required supplementary information, and it talks about everything related to PCR, where our streets are, how many are rated over a certain percentage, what we budgeted, and what we spent. So if you go back and you pull the 2023 ACFR, it's going to give you 3 years of that information.
Okay.
And which report? What did you say?
It's the annual comprehensive financial report, and we could send it directly to council. It is on the website also.
If you flick towards kind of the tail end of the audit, some of that stuff will be in there.
so I think the simple question is, are we there? Are we still on track? Is that still kind of what we're doing? I think that's what we're trying to understand.
Yeah, if your definition of service level is, I think maybe each one, we're maybe not seeing it from the same dictionary at this particular point in time, but based on that particular definition that you just gave, and we'd have to poll everybody to see exactly what their definition of service level is.
I mean, this is just over 5 years on council, like some information.
But I'm only reading the question based on what it says, and the question clearly says money, and not necessarily the definition that you gave. I believe that we're tracking very well towards the 70, 75 and above street rating program. Yes.
And that may not be the same dollar amount year in and year out, adjusted for inflation.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Anything, now that we've really rolled up our sleeves and gone down the rabbit hole on that one, anything from council?
The only thing I wanted to mention, this is definitely more, I guess, opinion discussion than question at this point, but because we're here, I did want to just I really appreciate the $750,000 allocated for the sidewalk maintenance program. I think that's one of the most frequent complaints I hear from residents is my street looks great, but my sidewalk wasn't done at the same time. And so now they're picking up code violations. They're, and they're upset. They're frustrated about why is my street done, but the city didn't do my sidewalk. So the sooner that we can, I guess I would just advocate for. I would love to see us catch up. So if there's a way for us to just continue to prioritize that, and I'm really grateful that you've designed the catch-up program, and that whatever you ask of me on this would help, I think, alleviate a number of the resident concerns that I hear about the lack of sidewalk maintenance in the last 3 years street maintenance program.
Mr. Renner has a question or comment on this particular topic?
Yeah, so I just wanted to actually dovetail a little bit with Councilwoman Bowers about that, because the other thing that we're starting to hear about more is streetlights. And so there was a line item on there where streetlight upgrades and maintenance, planning level. And so I was wondering if you can actually expand on that and define it, what is a planning level, because again, and that may be just to the assets that we have, we're getting more and more discussion about adding them into different locations, and so that may be a different project. But I wondered, if you could just expand on what a planning level document for streetlights is.
Yeah, so the intent there was to basically, what are we going to identify, what's the next area in which we're going to do painting projects in around the light poles themselves. We still have to do a little bit of catch up at this particular point as to what's been previously converted to LED heads as opposed to incandescent heads. And this is run through the service department, not necessarily through engineering. And then honestly, but we have very few requests on the books, if you would, as it relates to the installation of new streetlights. I'd have to look back, but it's less than 20 actually. And part of the challenge in our particular city is that there are some that are managed and maintained and installed by us, and then there are others that are managed and maintained and installed by AEP. They send us into a particular queue, and it's not always the easiest to figure out exactly where some of those requests are. And then part of understanding what the organization of some of the other streetlights are and how do we get individual streetlights added to particular locations. Our first and foremost location is at intersections and such, in areas where maybe there's a pedestrian crossing or something in those regards, and not necessarily to do whole streets. But again, we have all in all, we have very few requests on the books, but there are some. And again, they're split almost probably 50-50 between us and AEP. All the AEP requests, for example, have been submitted, and we check in on status every once in a while to see where they may be.
Okay, so adding streetlights, then you're saying that it's just you don't have a lot of requests.
Correct.
Okay. So then we failed in being able to answer to a number one request, especially on the west side, that keeps coming up. And maybe we could talk about offline about, how that process is failing, but we definitely need to meet that.
Sure. I mean, correct. And part of the west side specifically is where the majority of AEP lights are.
I understand. On Agler, yes.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, but not in the subdivision, right?
Correct.
Okay.
There are some. It depends. It depends on the subdivision. There are some subdivisions on the west side where they are actually AEP lights. The easiest way to tell is it a decorative light pole or is it a
Yes.
mast arm on a wooden pole? Those are largely AEP
Okay.
lights. Yeah.
Ms. Jones?
Yeah, I just have a clarifying question, and sorry, newbie, but the slide before that, I think it's the one where we had all of the different programs and the cost. You said 6.2 million, and what again is?
7.295 million.
Okay, I kept
Here.
hearing a 6.2.
Oh,
Did I make that
6.2
up?
is just the first, the top two blue lines, and then all the white lines through the middle here.
Okay.
This block that I'm outlining here.
That's the
That adds up to about 6.2. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anything further from council? All right, Mr.
So
Schultz.
can I, while we're talking streets, I know that there are, unless you guys want me to skip them, I'd be more than happy to, but there's two other questions as it relates to streets. Say again? Let's tackle them. Please provide an update on the number of miles of Detroit streets remaining to be rebuilt and the current estimated timeline until completion, given the funding level estimates. Mr. Conley.
Our asset inventory of pavement cross-sections has 4.3 centerline miles of Detroit streets remaining to be rebuilt at some given point in time. Again, we take into evaluation the pavement condition, the PCI score. There are other streets necessitating rebuilds that have macadam base, which is basically a crushed aggregate with 3-4 inches of asphalt on top. So kind of in the Laura, Heil, Colony Place, that area of town, and others where those pavement sections may deteriorate at a quicker rate, so necessitating a rebuild of those given streets. So it's not just Detroit streets. We do have other needs throughout town. So if we were to look strictly at the 4.3 centerline miles, we're at about $11.5 to $12 million in investment in today's dollars to cover the cost of those rebuilds. We'd also need to be mindful of the age, condition, break history of water lines, and if there's any stormwater improvements in a given corridor, so that we're properly addressing that at the time. Inflation has come up quite a bit here this evening. Over the last 5 years, asphalt has gone up 38%, so that's about a 6.5% compounded annual growth rate. Concrete has gone up close to 50%, right around 49%, 8.5% over the last 5 years. So we are contending with inflation, material, labor cost. Hopefully that subsides a little bit, but I don't have a crystal ball.
Anything from council on that?
What's a Detroit-style street?
A
Sorry.
Detroit-style street is a integral monolithic pavement section. So your curb and gutter and base.
Can you translate, Tom?
Okay.
I thought it was me and I was just tired. Okay, yeah.
So think of this as components, curb and gutter on both sides of the street. Then your pavement base in between the curb and gutter, that could be asphalt, it could be the macadam way back when, or a concrete pavement section with then asphalt on top. The Detroit street was a continuous pour from one curb to the other with the concrete base as one pavement section, and at one point in time, the pavement the concrete pavement came in disrepair, and it was just merely overlaid with asphalt. In doing that, that caused drainage issues at the curb line, as well as where downspouts and roof drains are conducted. So those, in certain instances, you'll see half of the curb can hole for those downspouts halfway covered by asphalt, so contributing to some underlying issues in those particular areas. Was that helpful?
So one of the things that Project Administrator Brian Kennedy has in his office are a bunch of core samples. It looks like literally like fireworks, mortar parts and pieces. And his office is almost full of these things. I actually took a picture today. I should have added it to the slide deck here. But one of the things that the engineering department is doing, they're going out and investigating suspected Detroit-style streets and actually investigating the condition of the base, so on and so forth. So when Tom and the engineering group look at a Detroit-style street, they basically are looking at it from a condition standpoint and saying, does the street actually need to be redone, or are there some other streets that actually are actually in worse condition and actually should fall ahead of technically a Detroit-style street. So I think we're probably a little bit out of fashion on this Detroit-style street part and piece here. And I think what engineering is doing now is really doing a much more complete inventory of the streets themselves and saying, okay, regardless of this type of street or this macadam type of street, this one should go first and be replaced because it's in much worse condition than the Detroit street itself.
So for context, Ms. Jones, this was actually my question, and this is a bit of a trip down memory lane. The reason why it was asked is, and Director Conway can speak to this much more officially than I can, but because of the mechanism of which they're constructed being a single pour, when they fall into disrepair, they need to be rebuilt, as opposed to a more traditional street which allows for mill and overlay, which is significantly less cost intensive on, I guess, a center lane mile basis would be the way that you would measure that, right? There were a number of these in our resident neighborhoods. He mentioned the drainage issues with regard to the downspouts and all of those types of things. So they were a bit of a heartburn or a pain point in years past, and because of their extreme cost of replacement, Issue 12 has helped us out considerably with regard to that. So just curious how we were catching up on that.
Yeah, and within 2025's program, Laura, Heil, Rocky Fork Drive North will be rebuilt as a part of next year's program, and I believe it's just over 1/10 of a mile of the inventory will be reduced as a result of those rebuilds.
And real quick, what's the cost of that 1/10 of a mile? You have a ballpark?
Well, it's
well.
I mean, I know they're expensive.
So we've broken things down more on a square yard of pavement. So square yard of pavement on a rebuild, we're looking at about $190 a square yard. For mill and overlay, we're looking at about $60 a square yard. And for our crack seal and micro surfacing, we're looking at just under $10 a square yard.
So rebuilds over 3X, regular mill and overlay. Okay, thank you.
So middle question here, good, Detroit
Yeah,
street?
if nothing, unless we want to wax on about Detroit-style streets. Powder fill for the evening.
Good. Middle question here, please discuss the benefits, challenges, and intended changes / improvements in 2025 to the chip seal top coat seal program that was introduced in 2024. Whether the budgeted amounts include resident communication and gravel cleanup post-application, and then whether the application timing impacts the lifespan of the application. A lot of words there, but I think go ahead.
So the chip seal, as it's referred to, is actually microsurfacing. So with that was a effort, pavement preventative maintenance effort. Again, covers much more in the way of square yardage, gives us an additional 7-10 years plus of useful life on roadways. So that goes into the pavement preservation side of the equation. So it is prudent for us to continue a program such as that within the street maintenance elements. We did experience a heat wave over this past summer. Temperatures well over 90 degrees. If you're down on the asphalt, that's well over 100 degrees. So when the microsurfacing was put down, we suspect, based off of those temperatures, that the binder reliquefied due to the heat and did not cure properly. Typically, it cures within an hour or two. Traffic got on it, so you would see tire marks through the pavement. So as a result, we're looking within the 25 program to have that associated work occur in the spring or in the fall when the temperatures are down. With respect to the granular gravel, that is a byproduct. It does happen as traffic gets on it. We are looking within the bid package to have street sweeping included as a bid item within the 25 program.
Anything from council on that? Ms. Bowers?
I'll just say thank you. I don't think it was any secret that this was, part of my concern. And so when I was doing my research, one, I found that it is a very favorable program to do for lots of reasons. It has environmental benefits when done correctly, as well as longevity to the streets. And so I think that if we, thank you so much for addressing some of the opportunities for improvement for next year. I do have, I really do hope that we make sure that we budget for the street sweeping. I think it was the Ohio Department of Transportation, I specifically identified that was an important follow-through to complete the project, and I do notice a lot of particulate, a lot of particulate that's been generated on these streets. So I am concerned about that washing into our storm sewers. So thank you for addressing that this go around. Yes.
Anything further?
I was just going to add, and all the grass clippings and all the leaves that people throwing into the damn, gutters.
Yeah, it happens. Anything further from council? All right.
Sweet.
Back to you all.
I went back one slide to project work in the transportation and mobility category. 6 projects identified, 1.1 million rounded up, $1 million in 2025 asks. This includes the traffic signal at Crescent Park, the Wind Ridge Bridge reconstruction, gateways, entryways, and wayfinding, West Johnstown Road reconstruction, and then the Morse Road reconstruction, which I presented in Mr. Comling's absence at last committee of the whole meeting for that $220,000 ask, and for the mayor to authorize or to sign the intermunicipal agreement with New Albany and the Franklin County Engineers Office. I did that last week. So I do know specifically, I'll go to the questions here on this particular page. Well, I guess we can start at the top only. Why don't we get back on track here? So we'll go with the first question here, which is how many crosswalks remain to be updated to ADA standards, and what is the anticipated timeline?
There are, our asset inventory has 2,374 ADA ramps within the community. Within the 2024 program, we addressed 165 ramps. In the 2025 program, we're looking at around 156 ramps. So that's roughly around 6 to 7% of the inventory being addressed over this past year and coming up in 2025. The number that I do not have is through those corridors. So when I said 165 within the 24 program, we may have had ramps, we may have had 400 as an example, and don't quote me on the number, that were in good, where you had 235 that were in good condition, but the 165 needed some type of repair. That could have been detectable warning strip as you approach the street. It could have been cracked concrete, cross slope, running slope related issues to be addressed. But we had 165 covered within 2024's program, and 156 is programmed within 2025.
Anything from council on that item?
Thank you.
Next question here, I'm sorry?
Mrs. McGregor.
With the wayfinding, is that going to be the entry signs?
So that project is broken up into those 3 categories. Gateways is one of them, the entry signs.
I just drove by the one on Taylor Station Road. It's sad.
That's the old school one, right?
Yeah. If somebody will take it down, bring it to my house, I'll paint it.
The challenge that we have is when we've tried to take some of them down, they're so old they actually crumble.
They don't.
It would be better to take it down and leave.
It does look bad.
It's
It
really
does.
bad.
But yes, so that the gateway entryway, that would technically be an entryway, not a gateway. Gateway would be more like Tech Center and Hamilton Road, bigger bigger location, and then wayfinding as the third category there.
Okay.
Just as a note on that, some of the work that we're doing down at 825 as it relates to the monument sign that'll be out front, that's going to establish some of the design guidelines for some of the other gateways as you come into the city, and some of the uniformity in the gateway, entryway, and wayfinding signs as they relate. So whether you're standing out front of City Hall or you're coming up Hamilton Road at Tech Center, you'll be like, oh, those things look familiar and are equal. So that's on the gateway sign.
Yes, sir, Mr. Schultz.
Second question here is, please shed light on the cost split for the Tech Center Drive at Crescent Park Signal, where the funding is split between the Capital Improvement Fund and the Tax Increment Fund. Were you taking this one, or was I? That was me. So, I'm sorry?
Shed light.
I'm sorry, these are published as provided. Oh, shed light, I got you now. Sorry, it's late. I'm catching up. So the original the original investment, I believe it was $125,000 allocated in last year's, in the 2024, the current year budget, was charged against the capital improvement plan. We were still in the process of figuring out the Crescent TIF itself and then the Buckles TIF. All of the monies for this particular year, the request, the 500 and, I'll have to go back here real quick, 540. That ask is going against the Buckles TIF in total. So it's about an 80-20 split. I think that if we would have understood the Buckles TIF and the Crescent TIF in more complete fashion last year, we would have charged the whole entire project against the TIF.
So to, I guess, clarify what you had said, it was just there was an inadequacy of funds in the TIF, and so the balance is being charged to the
Yeah, so the Buckles TIF and the Crescent TIF, they're adjacent to each other. The Crescent TIF hasn't started to produce at this particular point in time, which is then why we were charging it against, because technically the intersection is at the Crescent. The Buckles TIF will receive the direct benefit of the signal. So in conversation and reviewing the legislation this year, we determined that we can use Buckles TIF dollars in order to fund this particular signal. So it wasn't that yes, the Crescent didn't have any money in it at this particular point in time, but Buckles technically had sufficient funds last year. We didn't identify it fast enough.
Okay, so there's $25,000 that's being charged to the capital improvement fund. That can't be covered by.
So that 125.
I think it's just 25 if I'm.
25,000, yeah. This number here is likely. I didn't have the opportunity to figure out whether or not that was a real. I believe that we asked for $125,000 for the design, and it only cost us $100,000. And I believe that this $25,000 is actually going to fall back into the reallocation column.
Okay.
But that's yet to come. So there's a tick of more research that we need to do.
Anything from council on that item? All right, please continue.
The turn lane transportation improvements related to the Middle School East project were funded by the school district. Please advise whether the Middle School East sewer capacity improvements are being funded by the city, the school district, or a cost-sharing arrangement.
The southbound left turn lane on Klotz was warranted through a traffic impact study and warrant analysis associated with the school improvements over at Middle School East. So we are awaiting the plans for that southbound left turn lane into the facility. That would be a cost for the school district, so the design, construction, inspections associated with it. On a parallel track, we review, as a part of the site civil review for Middle School East, and this is dating back to about 2022, we evaluated the sanitary sewer system in the area. There is an existing 18-inch line that runs along Klotz Road, and then up towards the north end of the school property, it transfers to a 15-inch line. The sewer design flows associated with Middle School East were approaching, not exceeding, the capacity limitations set forth by the City of Columbus Sanitary Sewer Design Manual for design flows. So we found it prudent to look at doing an upsizing of the 15-inch to an 18-inch. Within their within the City of Columbus's design manual, anything below a 15-inch sewer capacity at 50% full, and anything 18 and up to, I want to say 28 inches is around 75% full. So following their design manual and being consistent with our water and sewer agreement with the City of Columbus, as well as our capacity management, operation, and maintenance efforts through the OEPA, we're moving forward with a upsize of a segment of pipe from 15-inch to 18-inch to better serve the tributary area.
Anything from council on that item?
So that's being paid exclusively by the city because it's somewhat discretionary, kind of best practices?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and the Middle School East did not otherwise excessively exceed the limit of the system.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
So it's not necessary, but it is prudent. Is that another way of
Correct,
putting it?
since we're approaching, on a design calculation basis, we're approaching the 50%.
Perfect. Thank you.
Next question, please be prepared to discuss the current status of any efforts to improve the flood mitigation in the Creekside Garage. That's you.
So schematic design was submitted this fall. We just recently provided our review and comments back to Fishbeck as the design consultant on the project. We anticipate the design development 60% submittal with the associated cost coming in sometime in either late this year or Q1 of 2025, anticipating the final plan package being available on or before the end of 2025 for potential permission to bid.
Anything from council? All right, thank you.
We've officially exited transportation and mobility. Go into utility systems. The first system here is water system. There are 3 projects identified. The first 2 are capital maintenance items. And the third one is the project. The project here is the replacement of the Taylor Road water line. That is a water line that will benefit the entire industrial area. It services the pump station that services the water tower that provides water to the whole southern half of the city of Gahanna. So therefore, we are charging that entire project not against the Water Capital Fund, but against the Central Park TIF, the East Gate Pizzuti TIF, and the East Gate Triangle TIF. And as you can see there, that is the majority of the $3.3 million ask, with the residual in I believe it's, the residual monies for water line replacement, this $240,000 from the Water Capital Fund being asked for. Honestly, that would maybe get us through some maybe design work on a next level item for maybe construction in 2026. And then if there are any fire hydrants that are in need of repair and or replacement, that's the capital maintenance item for fire hydrant, the fire hydrant replacement program. With that, we could take questions on water.
Council, anything to add there? Just more of a general comment. I've noticed as we've gone through this particular budget book, it seems like, I don't know if it's just a function of, property value appreciations and the TIFs producing more, but it does seem like those TIFs are being called upon to help fund a lot more things this budget go around than in prior years. And I think it's obviously a good thing. It's why they exist.
We've been very strategic in identifying when the TIFs can be used. 4 of us have done a review of the legislation that basically says these are the exact moments in which we can do those things. And instead of just, throwing things at you guys, we've been much more strategic at identifying where and when those TIF dollars can be used, which is good.
And it makes perfect sense, and it's consistent with what we've talked about in these chambers, as well as the capital improvement advisory committee meetings, where use the most restrictive fund first. So anyway, good job.
Sanitary sewer, we've identified 6 projects at about $2.2 million. First 2 on the list here are capital maintenance items, which is sanitary sewer rehab and replacement. Basically, as sanitary sewer projects would become, be identified, we would go to the CIP advisory committee, we would reduce this $800,000, and we would create likely a design project first and foremost to design the sewer, and then ask for funding in the subsequent year in order to construct said sewer. And then the second capital maintenance item is to start back up a CCTV program, whether it be an internal program and or a contracted service, so that we can begin to televise, clean, and line sanitary lines, which then obviously improve their life cycle. Next one is already curious to me because I think maybe I have this in the wrong location. I believe this project is mistitled. I believe this project is a Taylor Road sewer line replacement. I'm going to pause. I'm going to look at Tom, and he's going to look back at me inquisitively. We got to find more information on this particular project. This one's confusing. This is an old project number here, this WGSNS. So this is an older project, and we need to just figure out exactly what we're talking about there. I apologize for that. I honestly didn't notice this until I sat down. And then Sarin Drive sanitary sewer replacement. This is one of the projects that we've had. This project has been ready to actually be constructed. It's gone out to bid, I believe, once and or twice, and we haven't actually received a bid because it's a relatively small project. So in this particular instance, we're looking to package this particular project, I believe, with the Gahanna Middle School East project and potentially one other project in order to hopefully get a successful bid and then have a successful construction contract implemented for both of those projects at basically the same time. And then the last project on here is the sanitary pump station evaluation and improvements. This was a project that was, I think it might have been listed as 2 projects. It was an evaluation first and foremost, and then it was improvements second. We've done evaluations on 2 pump stations, and I had to take a deep breath when Tom gave me those particular numbers. Those numbers right now are not indicative, or they're not included inside of the CIP. So most likely, if we're going to move forward with those in 2025, we'll be looking for a supplemental in 2025 after we have a chance to identify exactly what that work looks like, so on and so forth. But those are very large. Those will be very large asks for the 2 pump stations that need upgraded, and then we'll continue to do evaluations on the other pump stations that we have, which then will get incorporated in the CIP as well. So that $280,000 right there is really only for the evaluation of the other pump stations that we have. And then again, we'll continue to look at the scope and breadth of work that's necessary to actually do the upgrade of the 2 pump stations that are already evaluated, and come back to you folks when more appropriate.
So, Mr. Schultz, following along with your list here on the screen, on page 116 in our budget books, that $420,000 figure with the Taylor Road waterline replacement name, I believe that is the West Gahanna Relief Sanitary Sewer Project. That's what's listed in our budget book, and that's what says $420,000.
Yep. West Gahanna, WG. You're absolutely correct. This is just a cut and paste mistake. I didn't replace this by saying West Side Sewer Relief. You're absolutely correct, 100%.
Any additional comment?
That is, I believe that 420, I'll look at Tom for this, I believe that 420 is for additional design work or design work for the relief sewer itself with construction monies programmed in the CIP in out years.
So this 420 is for phase 1, so that would be from the outfall by West Johnstown extended, heading down West Johnstown, up South Stigler to the Agler Imperial, I believe, intersection. And there was another line item in the budget for $75,000 for West Johnstown road design. So as the sewer goes in, we're going to want to replace the roadway. And so that should allow us to start programming the rebuild and necessary improvements along the West Johnstown corridor as well.
Thank you. Anything from council on those items?
Just for the record, I'll update this particular slide so that when it goes into the record, it'll be a correct name there.
Thank you so much.
Stormwater. Stormwater is the last section in utility. There's 2 capital maintenance projects here that are identified. There's no physical projects that have been identified throughout the city. Well, for the first one, there's been no physical projects identified. This money's would again be used similar to what I said in the sanitary instance, where if we did identify a project, we would reduce this, create a very specific project for whatever amount of money that was. This just gives us some money in the 2025 year in order to get started. And the second item here is very similar to the CCTV program that I stated for sanitary, but this would be a CCTV program to investigate the condition of stormwater facilities throughout the city and identify various different projects moving forward.
Council?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, Mr. Renner.
I have one go back, and I apologize, but it has everything to do with this. One of the bullet points for the 2025 is perform stormwater asset data collection, tributary hydraulic modeling, and capital improvement recommendations. Director, we've talked about the west side specifically. Is that ongoing, or is that something that's hidden in this bullet point, or how can you expand upon that?
So as a part of the West Side Sewer project, as we're looking through Phase 1, the Phase 1 improvements just discussed, a stormwater component will be looked at in that corridor, as well as we lead up into Phase 2 that goes up into the Royal Manor, Brentwood, Royal Manor area. Servicing that area, looking at the stormwater improvements in that Phase 2 target area as well. So we'll do some hydraulic modeling and figure out what the recommendations are for general improvements in those areas.
When do you think that you'll have an output to be able to discuss? Is it logical to talk about it at Phase 1, or do you want to wait till Phase 2?
So we recently issued the RFQ for the West Side Sewer. We're to receive those qualifications back from design professionals on December 13th. We'll start conducting the review. If interviews are needed to down select, and then negotiation of fee and bringing forward a contract to City Council sometime in the first quarter for those design services.
And that includes also the investigation that you talked about,
Correct.
right? Right.
Yes.
Okay, and then when do you expect the output actually to be, to have something?
So our first availability for the construction, if everything holds with the City of Columbus, would be construction occurring on the relief sewer Q1 of 2026. I think that's a bit aggressive on schedule with all the design and so forth that otherwise needs to take place, but I would suspect that either this time, maybe over the summer, we may have some preliminary information, or yet next fall, depending on when we get the contract or the consultant on board to start their investigations.
So let me try to be a little bit more clear. The output that I'm looking for is the investigations on the stormwater and modeling itself. And is that what you're talking about in the summer?
Yes.
Okay. And will we have time to start talking about community green infrastructure type projects that you and I talked about?
So green infrastructure was included in the RFQ, and that will be a design component that the consultants will be evaluated.
Excellent. I'm doing my thesis on green infrastructure, so thank you.
Anything further from council on those items? All right. Mr. Schultz, can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. This 900,000 figure for the stormwater system rehab and replacement?
Yes, sir.
Did I hear you say that is, it's a funding request with not necessarily a project identified? However, we know we will likely need to spend a significant chunk of that. Anything that's not spent will be returned back to the fund.
Correct. So anything that's programmed in this particular fashion, if it's not programmed and encumbered by the end of next year, it'll end up going back. So I believe the ask for 2024 was about the same amount of money there. That money's going back. We're basically asking for it again. If we had identified a specific project that would have went to the CIP advisory committee, we would pull it out of it. We would basically do a deduction from the 900,000 for let's say 200,000 in design services. One would go to 700, and then the specific project would be set up for X project with under a new project number. And then Joanne and her group would create that project inside of the accounting system.
We're confident enough that there's a fairly sizable chunk of stormwater that's out there. That's why this request is.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Okay, moving on from transportation, mobility, and utilities, and going into the last section of the document this evening, but that's equipment. Again, just to overstate it, we've done equipment on a few different nights. We're actually going to do the last piece of equipment next week when we do the last portion of the budget here. So we're really only talking about a portion of this $2.4 million. The next slide here, basically what we're going to be talking about tonight is really two components. We're talking about wheeled assets largely. So what you're looking at here is about a $765,000 ask for wheeled assets. Wheeled assets are largely, the way in which they've been handled in the past was largely a capital maintenance item. You're basically taking one vehicle out of service and putting a new vehicle into service. So these are yearly asks. One of the things that Director Weibensinger has done, along with the fleet superintendent and Director Anvers, is really do a good condition assessment of all of our wheeled assets to know exactly where they should be in a life cycle maintenance and replacement type scenario. So there was a lot of previous money that was encumbered where we've actually been able to churn through and make some significant progress on getting some aged assets taken out of service and some new assets put in service in their place. So for 2025, we've identified, again, the 6 projects. They're pretty standard projects, but specialty equipment, police vehicles, fleet equipment, heavy equipment, and then vehicle replacements. The heavy equipment has a number of funds that we would potentially hit to purchase a vehicle or two, and then the vehicle replacement also hits the capital fund and the street fund in the amounts shown on the table here. If you were to think of heavy equipment, think of a snowplow. If you were thinking of vehicle replacement itself, think about it like a fleet vehicle, like a code enforcement car, so on and so forth. Police vehicles, again, self-explanatory. And then specialty vehicles, think vac trucks and other related things that help the operation out. Stump grinders for maybe Parks and Rec, a lift apparatus, so on and so forth. But for 2025, we're asking for $765,000 spread across the variety of funds shown on the screen.
Anything from council regarding equipment? Seeing none? All right, back to you, Mr. Schultz.
The last piece of equipment that we'll talk about this evening is EV chargers. Right now, the city manages and maintains 6 different EV chargers across, I think, 4 different locations throughout the city. There's 2 outside of City Hall. Basically, with this $60,000 here, this ask here is to upgrade each one of those heads, which are at their end of their useful life, to a standardized head in which we're currently speccing for our project down at 825. So basically, this 60 grand would replace the 6 heads that are located throughout the city. But there's also a variety of things that we're doing in this EV space. I know that we do have one question here. I'll go to the actual question here. But please advise whether the EV charging stations planned to be installed will require the user to pay for electric or charge their vehicle, or if the electricity is paid by the taxpayer funding. Director Weibensinger, he's really been the one spearheading the EV efforts here. One of the things that we've been doing, I think we've talked about this either across the desk here or even in individual conversations. But one of the things that PCFO is doing, our partner here at PCFO is doing, they're doing an electrification roadmap for us. So basically, how do we get to electrification of our city fleet, as one example? We're working with a company called Donovan Energy. They're an energy consultant, and they're currently studying all of the 4 and 5 locations that we have EV chargers installed and understanding what the capacity is. Are they in the right place? What is their usage? What is the model? A lot of this is giving us the intelligence to move forward with an EV program that actually makes sense, as opposed to one where we just kind of slapped it in place. One of the examples that I'll give you is that our EV charging stations, you are only allowed to park at an EV charging station for 3 hours. And after that, Madam City Attorney, it is a misdemeanor if you park there for 3 hours and 1 minute. I'm not saying that because you drive an EV. I apologize if that was the reference. But those are some of the things that, as we've gotten into this particular program, or not into the program, but into the investigative work that we've been doing, that's kind of come to a head. To answer the question directly on the screen here, yeah, it's a little bit of both, but it is largely taxpayer subsidized at this particular point, and that needs to be remedied. So one of the things that we'd like to do is continue to be able to do our due diligence. Still request the $60,000 because we do need to replace those heads. There's a number of grants out there. There's a number of grants that we're co-sponsored with MORPC to impact this particular space. But come back before you folks in the January, February timeframe and actually give a complete presentation on the EV space, what we're doing, so on and so forth. We're in the process of procuring an EV vehicle for fleet so that they can begin to understand the technology, so on and so forth. Director Vollmer spoke about the need for our service technicians as another example, to be able to actually service an EV fleet, which currently they're gasoline operators or mechanics, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of moving parts and pieces inside of this particular space. And basically what we're requesting at this particular point is to come back to you folks in January, February, and actually give a complete presentation on the EV space, and the direction in which we're headed.
Anything from council on that? Mrs.
The
McGee.
ones we have now, do people pay to use them now?
So they pay an initiation fee. I believe when they plug in their vehicle, they pay, I believe, they pay the initiation fee, which I believe is 50 cents, and then they pay $1 for the first hour.
Okay.
And that's what we're looking into.
No, it's good, actually. I mean, because every, like Clean Fuels Ohio and all the other organizations are recommending that these fees go up. It's a benefit, and by the way, you're still making out ahead of gas.
Ahead of the gas, right. And that's one of the things we'll talk about too when we bring the package to you guys is what is the will of council and so on and so forth as to, excuse me, what those charges and fees look like and so on, so that we can set them appropriately. I believe, I'll look over at Corey, I think they're set by code currently. So there's even a code update over and above the misdemeanor part and piece that I joked about earlier. That wasn't really a joke though. So we do need to neaten it all up in total so that we have a comprehensive look at the EV space.
Yeah, so I know it's getting late, so I think what I would like to say is that I'm interested in having a more robust discussion on this, on the idea of kind of sustainability and electrification more globally and more comprehensively. This is a big, big topic that I don't think we want to talk about at 10 o'clock at night right now. So Mr. Renner, please don't. I just wonder, maybe what is on the actual horizon? Are hydrogen, are fuel cells actually more on the near horizon? And should we just wait and skip over this and see what happens with fuel cells? So I'm interested in seeing where we go with this. But I'd really like to see, as we're talking about real dollars and having to make compromises to where $60,000 goes or $100,000 goes, and can we beef up a sidewalk program, or can we make sure that our nonprofits are getting funded? I'm wondering, is something like this something that can be grant funded? Can we come back and like leave this out of the budget for now, but know that we're going to be working on a more comprehensive program down the road? So those, I guess that's just I just want to sort of whet that dialogue.
Yeah, so I just real quick, just to give you guys something to think about, is the 6 heads that we currently have in place right now. Many of them falter, and then many of them go out of service. I actually think one in the city parking lot here has been out of service for almost 14 or 15 months at this particular point in time. There's no parts, there's no ability to get service, so on and so forth. So this 60,000 is really to replace those six units, which is they're dual units, right? So it's out here at City Hall. There's 4 parking spots for those 2 heads. So the 60,000, in my estimation, is that if we should if we're not going to choose to replace those heads, we should probably have a discussion about removing them, because in many instances, you go to plug in and they're actually out of service, and they actually don't work, and then you can't get a motherboard for them, or so on and so forth. They're not communicating with the mothership in order to actually start charging and doing those things. There is a number of grant programs that are out there. Again, we are co-authored on the one for 825, or on one for Friendship Park, and then we're also on the other one, which I'm not exactly sure where it covers. The municipal lot. So while we're asking for the 60,000 here, about $10,000 a head, the actual spend likely would be less, because some of it would be subsidized through grant funding. I don't know that at this particular point with the reserves in which we have set up on the capital program, I'm not sure that we're really moving the needle on the sidewalk program or something else with just the 60,000. But yeah, we'd love to have a conversation about hydrogen and nuclear and all those other things. Sorry, I'm just kidding. At a later point in time.
I'm a proponent of nuclear. I really am.
So,
but hydrogen is 3 times more expensive, and you'll never get there. It's several different companies have actually really skewed the market and or misinformation. Toyota is one of them, and shame on them. Fuel cells will never, ever be in the car transportation arena. They may be in the trains and heavy equipment, maybe, but again, it's 3 times more expensive, and we'll never, ever get there to commiserate with what batteries are being able to do.
If I could jump in, I think that's the benefit, again, of our partnership with PCFO.
Yes.
They're the experts in the field to help us guide that and then create that roadmap for us for how we move forward.
Yeah, I'm just telling you what's commonly known in the scientific literature. And everybody's trying to actually combat that. Some of the misinformation that is rampant out there about hydrogen. Even President Bush proposed and promoted hydrogen, and that's the whole narrative, for the oil and gas industry. What Biden did, it was very good, but again, it was to appease the oil and gas industry, and it was nothing to do with sustainability.
So I'll just say, to second some comments that I heard up here, I too am looking forward to a more robust discussion on this particular topic. But a little bit of context, I remember in past budget cycles when we actually funded the installations, and I believe the installations were largely funded from grant funding. If I remember correctly, it was maybe a MORPC secured grant, something along those lines.
I'm not exactly sure of the exact source, but I know it's grant.
It was AEP. I don't believe it was MORPS. I believe it was AEP.
I remember at that time specifically, one of the concerns that I raised was I'm cool with constructing them, but the expectation is that if you plug in, you pay for it the same way. If you drive any other car, you're swiping your card, or you're handing over dollars at the cash register. So I would just underscore that again, that if we're going to continue down this path, my preference or ask would be that, just from an equitable standpoint, right, that people are paying for it. Not asking for it to be a profit center, but that we're covering our all-in costs on this stuff. So I guess with that, anything else from council?
So this was your question?
Yeah, absolutely it was. Yeah. It was a follow-up. I mean, I've made this comment before. and,
Statements are good.
You know. All right. Anything further from council? Okay, so I think I had, process-wise, I had sent out an email asking if there was an appetite or any interest in kind of talking about where things currently stand with regard to the calendar and any items that folks want to see either added or removed. I'm also mindful that it's after 10 o'clock here. This particular conversation probably went a little bit longer than anticipated, so if there is an appetite to continue the discussion, I'll certainly oblige, but if we'd like to maybe have that conversation or broader discussion next week, it seems like we have, what is it, planning and council office. Given there'll probably be an absence of capital projects, I think maybe that one might go a little bit quicker.
You have mayor's office and economic development and law department. You have 5 next week.
Okay.
They should be short. They're all pretty straightforward budgets.
So what's the will of council? We want to conclude or adjourn this evening, or do we want to continue? I guess here's where I'm coming from is, you know, we have 2 more, well, I take that back. We have 1 more finance committee meeting where we talk about department level budgets. Then we have essentially 1 meeting on the calendar currently for general budget discussion, and then a final review of the amended budget on December 9th. My concern is that 1 meeting may not be sufficient. So we've gone through over half of the budget. If we want to talk about it now, I'll facilitate. If we want to maybe try and allocate some time a week from now, we can do that.
Just say, I don't have any significant concerns. I've expressed one concern about a staffing position, and I know Director Vollmer is going to present some additional information on it. So so everyone here hears I don't have any significant concerns about the budget. And I think that some of the comments that we heard tonight fail to take into consideration that we're doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing with the carry forward of the unreserved fund balance, that we're applying these to capital budgets going forward in 2025. And as a council member, as I sit here, that's clear to me and I understand it. So I have general, I would say I have general comfort with the budget where we sit today.
A lot of heads nodding. Okay.
So maybe if I see heads nodding, maybe one meeting is going to be adequate, I guess.
Okay. I'll pose.
Saying that 1 meeting is the 25th or the 22nd?
No, right now, it looks like according to the schedule, next week, the 25th, will be several more departments. So a similar discussion like this. And then on the 9th, we have at least planned, I'm sorry, on the 2nd, we then have planned a general budget discussion, which would be what do we want added, what do we want removed, trying to come to some sort of a consensus so that we can give staff guidance, and then they come back with a final review of the amended budget on the 9th.
I feel good with 1 meeting.
Yeah. Okay, so nothing further for this evening? All right. Last item as far as process, questions to me by Thursday at 5 p.m. Does that work? Okay. Thank you all. Thus concludes finance. Thank you.